We're living in very interesting times. You hear that constantly, and it doesn't really do it justice. But I believe we're living at a time where everything is being revealed, everything's coming out, all the deepest, darkest secrets, the nastiest stuff, but everything's coming to light. And at the same time, there's a mass awakening. We hear about that all the time, or a quickening. But there's people all around the world that are waking up quickly to the truth. And that truth is that what we're dealing with has very little to do with political parties or really humans. This is a spiritual battle we're in the middle of and that we're seeing unfold. It's as above, so below. It's happening in heaven. It's happening here. We're seeing times unlike anything we've ever seen before. And there's many of us, men and women, elders to children, who have been seeing things coming, especially over the last decade, and have been trying to warn people for a very long time in their own specific ways. And I believe there's millions of them. And I believe that's part of that awakening. A lot of these people are waking up to those types of gifts and those types of visions. Some people are having dreams. Some people can talk to people about this, and they're really good orators. And they can gain a following. Some make videos, movies, TV shows, whatever it is. But there is a battle. And on the other side, of course, we're being programmed by evil through everything. So there's a battle, and we're all engaged. I feel like myself, and I include myself in this, but myself and many others, as I said, have been awoken to this a long time ago. And we've been, in our own way, learning about it throughout the years and trying to show others what we're finding. And we found so many. We've all found each other. So tonight, I'm really looking forward to having this discussion because I do believe in many ways we're watching them build the final beast system before our very eyes. That's why I wanted to bring on a great group of researchers and friends that I've known for many years. We all have our own relationships, but I've known them all at different times. I've had them on shows before. That's how you know who I'm friends with, really, is who I have on the shows throughout the years. But I thought this would be a fantastic group of men, just like myself, I believe, that woke up to this stuff a while back, and they've been led to try to show others what's going on. And again, I'm not saying it's just us. We're not the only ones. There are millions of people around the world, but we're a very small fraction of that. I'm really grateful to know and be friends with these people. So I'll just say, I'll give the names first, then I'll let them just kind of say hi. So Jacob Israel, I'll just go right down the list. How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing fantastic. Are you kidding me? I'm listening to your open, and this is KJ. You know, this is you're just such a blessing, man. So I'm so happy you have me on tonight. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, man. I'm glad you're here as well, of course. And then we'll go Days of Noah. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Very well. I just appreciate you having me on for another talk here. It's pretty wild and exciting times. And yeah, I think there's no better time than now to get together and kind of discuss some of these things.
Definitely, sir.
I'm just happy to be part of it.
Oh, of course. And thank you. And then there's Casey from Into the Stars, man. How you doing?
Hey, KJ. I'm glad to be here. It's glad to meet you guys. It's been a while, and I'm looking forward to the show.
Thanks, man. We're just going to get started. I love all you guys. You know this. Now, before we started, Days and Jacob got to meet each other. Casey, do you know Days and Jacob?
No, I haven't met them yet.
Go ahead, guys, please.
It's nice to meet you. I'm so excited to talk to you, man, to hear what you all have to say. This is great.
Yeah, it's exciting. Nice to meet you, Casey.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, we need to start putting our heads together and, really getting down into the the deeper portions of this kind of stuff and getting down to the nitty gritty.
Exactly, man. That's why I was thinking, I just, for whatever reason, of course, I felt us four would be a good crew tonight. And we'll just kind of, again, free form discussion. I'll throw out some topics. If one of y'all are talking, someone has something to add, feel free to jump in. We'll just kind of go like that. And feel free to talk about any of your newest discoveries or whatever. So I'm just going to kind of go at random. I'll just shoot to the middle as I'm looking at the names as y'all came in. I'll say Days of Noah. What are your feelings about everything happening right now with this massive escalation of really madness and just chaos we're seeing? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, overall, I think it really comes down to just the the culmination of something that's been happening for some time generationally. I just think there's been this development of this, of course, the global order, the new world order, but there's also been this slow development of this, what some would call the new world religion, this new Gaia worship, this new pantheism, this new oneness type of postmodern culture that we're seeing now escalate. So I think we're just really seeing, some may even call it an apotheosis, right? This rebirth, this newness of spirit, and I guess the collective unconscious, all the terms they use. I really think we're just meeting that point to where everything is going to so-called reset. This the fifth age of Aquarius, all of these different ideas that are thrown out there. I think we're just starting to witness the rolling out of those. And I would say overall it's very scriptural. I think we're experiencing the birth pains. I think we're experiencing the beginning of sorrows. I think we're really just witnessing the early stages of revelation, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I could see that as well. I'm thinking even I'll throw out a specific topic here, and I'll go to Casey with this one. And thanks, Days. Casey, now they're talking the World Health Organization and the CDC are talking about now a second lockdown. Have you looked into that at all? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to try that, but hopefully enough people are awake and aware to see what's going on and see the censorship that they're trying to like push over on all of us so that people stay asleep. And that's why it's important to be active in your communities. And, in the past, we've been told that protests and rallies don't work, but I think they actually can work, especially in a situation like this, where you're actually breaking the rules. We did a protest this weekend here in Connecticut, and basically, there's only about 15 or 20 people, but probably 400 or 500 cars drove by, and none of us were social distancing or wearing masks. And
Good for you, man.
Yeah, and the word gets out, and all of a sudden people start understanding that, look, you don't have to do what they're telling you to do. So I hope that this second wave doesn't have the same result as this first wave did.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I actually, the Trump rally is coming to my home state next Saturday, and I actually reserved a ticket. I did it did a few days ago, and I'm glad I did because I guess they're all out now. So I found a hotel like 7 miles away from the hotel. I'm going to do that, maybe just Uber over or something. But I've never been to a presidential rally, but I think this is like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I would love to go and see. I'm just hoping nothing crazy happens, but we'll see, man. Jacob, I want to throw something to you, and after this, I'm just going to actually raise a few questions, and I'll let you all answer at different times. I'm curious about some of your answers and some things I've been seeing. But Jacob, you're also really good and gifted at noticing signs. In the skies. Like, I noticed a lot of signs as well, but you're really good at a lot of specific signs and symbols happening around in the world, more spiritually related. You want to talk a bit about the rainbow and anything else you may have discovered here recently?
Yeah, it's interesting. Earlier, you were talking about it's like the Book of Revelation is playing out, and for those who that are new to my channel that don't know me or anything else, I've been talking about all these chapters in Revelation like playing out. Back in September 23rd, 2017, a lot of people made a big hoopla out of something that took place over Jerusalem where Virgo was crowned with 12 stars. The sun was shining on her, the moon was at her feet, and Jupiter was in the womb of Virgo for 9 months, exactly September 23rd. This child is born, right? And then the dragon comes up beneath it to swallow it. It was all playing out. It was like a sign in heaven. And, I had talked about this maybe about a year before, and I kept, kind of hammering this point home. One of the reasons why I took some criticism early on was that I really kind of saw the world flip-flopping, going upside down pretty quick. And when I saw that sign, I said, well, because obviously I'm more concerned with what's going on spiritually in the kingdom of God, which you can't see, right? And you're not supposed to be asking for signs and any of that stuff. But here's this signpost in the sky. And right before it, there was this eclipse. Does anybody remember the eclipse, the Great American Eclipse?
Yeah.
That took place in, I think it was August of 2017.
Yes.
Well, I had been doing shows where you look at this eclipse and it marks this X over the United States. Of course, on the Economist magazine cover, you had Trump on the judgment card right next to the tower card, which means great upheaval, great change. It was like everywhere it was telling us what was coming. Everybody was picturing Trump as Nero. It was like they were saying that all these things were going to happen. And it was almost like God was saying, hey, this is what's coming. So a little while ago, there was this sign, the signal from space. It was every 16 days, there was like a repeating signal, like 4 days on and then a couple of days off. But it was 16 days. I don't know if any of you heard about it.
Yeah, that actually came out shortly after they found the Tic Tac UFOs, and the Navy released footage of UFOs, and that became a big story. It was around that time, I believe. But go ahead.
So I couldn't get away from that 16. It was like everywhere I looked, I saw 16, 16, 16. Now, I had done these programs on Revelation 12 because that's the Revelation 12 sign, Revelation 13, right? You know, and it was almost like it's all playing out and unfolding as we're living. Because really, the revelation of Christ to John and Patmos, what is that? It's the same thing that happens to us. So how cool is it if Jesus's words, this generation shall not pass until they see these things come, was speaking about us? I think that's pretty cool. So this 16 signal, man, it finally dawned on me. It was God's about to pour out his curses. Now, I know a lot of people have issues with that, but really it's not a curse on the heart of mankind. It's about ripping the idols from us. So I started to see Exodus playing out in like such a crazy way that I was doing one show after another show. And now the shows that I'm doing, I'm going back and I'm showing shows that I did 2 months ago, saying you hear it's like God is giving us a message of hope. And you brought up the rainbow, and that's kind of where we're at right now, whereas I couldn't get away from the rainbow. There was a rainbow everywhere you look, right? So I did this show about the everlasting covenant that God made with Noah. So it was kind of like, you got to get into your ark. And then I noticed, my God, over the last, 2 years, I had done one show after another show about building the ark. Okay, now it's time to get into the ark. Okay, now it's time to weather the storm. Now it's time to get out of the ark. And then here we are, rainbows are everywhere. So where we see the world going to, it looks like it's going crazy. You got to remember, John was told in the book of Revelation to measure the temple. The outward court, don't look at that. Those that are seeking God, those that are going to live for the kingdom of God, God's got you covered. As long as you don't partake of those sins, when these plagues are unleashed, if you will, first God's servants are called and they're chosen and they're sealed. And so when this time comes, I'm not that stressed. I don't think a lot of you are very stressed. I am to a certain extent, but really my eternal treasure is not here. And I see it as Casey was saying, as Dave was saying, I see an upheaval and change and a rebirth, and that 7 years ends on the 24th, the 2024. There's that 7 years. This we're in the middle of this 7 years of famine.
Well, there's also where that rainbow landed, specifically on the ark.
Noah's Ark, yeah. I did that. Yeah, so I told everybody, this is kooky, right? I called you up. AJ, I'm talking about you in the video I'm editing right now about our conversation, and then how right after we got off the phone, and you were encouraging me to have more faith, right? And how right after we got off the phone, I got somebody sent me a text about the blood rainbow, which really, really is such a beautiful message, because it's about the rainbow's still there even when the sun sets. God's promise is always there even in the darkness. And that our conversation was all about rainbows, and then you got that right after. I love that that's how he works. We know that. Yeah, and what happened, just to and then I'll get off the microphone.
Go ahead, you're okay.
What happened was, so here I'm telling everybody the rainbow's coming to the ark, which is basically like, okay, the new world that we're about to enter into, it's not going to be fun. Right? It's like going to be starting from scratch. Everything's going to be different, and we're going to have to acknowledge change. We're going to have to be okay with it because we know that God's leading us. But he's saying to be fruitful, to multiply, right? So what we got to do is we got to love, and we got to bring others to the kingdom of God. And how do we do that? By being not of this world and not rioting and doing horrible, terrible things to other people that are really supposed to be an extension of us, that we're supposed to do to them. There's so much hate. There's so much pain. There's so much fear in this world. And it's like, what can I do but do a video about rainbows? And I say the rainbow's coming, and then 5 days later, a literal rainbow. Now this is where it gets eerie. A literal rainbow lands on the replica of Noah's Ark in Ipswich, the huge one. The one that I talked about in my video 5 days earlier where I said the rainbow's coming to Noah's Ark. And then the channel, get this, the YouTube channel that caught this, who lived in Ipswich, who saw the rainbow and filmed it, has a YouTube channel called revelation.com.
Nice.
I'm not endorsing his channel. I don't know anything about it, but I'm saying that's God's way of saying, hey, everybody, just have faith and settle down.
Yeah. Good point, man. Yeah, right. Like we have to, again, not living in fear, but I love that. I love those kinds of observations, of course, and of course, signs and symbols and synchronicities is one way he speaks to us, and one way that we read what's really happening behind the scenes. Days before I get to Casey, I'll ask you any synchronicities, signs, or symbols in particular you've been paying attention to. Anything you've noticed or been talking about, or
not particularly in regards to signs, I guess. None that come to mind right away, but I definitely have seen a lot of patterns, especially in politics and in just the nature of society, which is very, very clear, especially regarding these riots, regarding the protests, of course, regarding the race programming that seems to be back. We're experiencing 2016 all over again in this type of tandem programming operation that they love to use. But overall, I just think this really explains the nature of mankind. I think what we're seeing, as well as the revelations and seeing Revelation play out, we're also just seeing the general nature of mankind. We're seeing the fallen nature of man. We're seeing the influence of the flesh, and more so, we're seeing the majority, the multitude, just pretty much falling into that kind of default mode of animal nature, right? And we're definitely seeing that exhibited through these riots. It's a very Hobbesian kind of example. We're seeing man pretty much revert to his lowest state. And what seems to be most influential to people today is, the technology and the processing of everything, all of the new cultural interests. But and with that, you'll find that most people today no longer really either believe in God or care about spiritual things, and they seem to not believe in God, but more so believe in this world. And the interesting part is this world is on its way out. This culture, this society, it's at its end, and that's why we see nihilism and escapism pretty much running the show, which just speaks to this nature of mankind. So I've been more focusing on the rollout of the psyops, but also just really paying attention to the exhibit basically that we're seeing now of the real fallen nature of man and the lack of spirit and obedience in the earth.
Well, speaking of the rollout of the psyops, I just a couple days ago, I went ahead and watched Joker again. I watched it when it first came out, and I did a video on it back when it came out originally, because
Yeah, I remember.
that was a really, I think, a classic example of that predictive programming and even social engineering. And then I started thinking back just a few days ago about, and I've done this, and I need to do a new video and just start connecting some dots again, because there's some other things happening that I've been thinking a lot about that I want to put together, especially around the funeral of the man that passed, right? That got his neck hurt or couldn't breathe. But so with that, they buried him in a coffin made of solid gold, full gold. And that kind of goes back to Osiris. There's some really interesting things with that. And I saw a news story earlier. I'm going off on a tangent. I know I saw a news story earlier where in the Chaz, they've got this zone they've created in Seattle, of course, like a bunch of the anarchists have created their own city within a city. But they're saying they're having problems with people drawing penises on everything. And again, to me, that goes back to Osiris. I had some Osiris stuff in my last video as well. But beyond all the Osiris stuff, because I am looking for the trend with all of these nihilists and BLM to start turning more towards the Christians, because I think that's the group we're going to see, black, white, brown, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just this is where a lot of that's kind of manifesting, and I think we could see it grow eventually, and that'll turn towards the Christians. So these are the trends I've been watching for. But the nihilism thing and anarchy has been so programmed with this, even back to that Batman movie with Bane. They even had the 322 in that movie at one point. They showed that, but it was all about anarchy and rich versus poor, and the poor taking back theirs. The Purge series, they want to program us so hard with that. They've made a TV series about it as well, like 5 movies on it. Anyway, go ahead. Anything off that with where I'm going? Days.
Yeah, no, this is basically exactly what I've been seeing. We see it in the movies. Of course, you've mentioned on those all those different movies, this idea of anarchy, this basically what we're really getting to is the new global reset. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the recent Klaus Schwab who's come out and claimed that, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for us to roll out our new or our reset, our next agenda, which is really just the fourth industrial revolution, which is pretty much technocracy. And it's interesting how this COVID situation and all of these this race programming has contributed to this rollout, and it's all apparently serendipitous, but obviously those of us who are in the know can clearly see that this has been set up and planned for some time. But it's very interesting to me how the race angle is being used to really facilitate this entire thing, especially when you're talking about Bane and the Purge and all of these different media examples that we're very familiar with. They never really had this race component, so why are they using race? And that's another thing I've been focusing on, and I guess I've always kind of had that as a part or a component of my work. uh, Trying to create explanations for why race plays such a massive role in the psychological operations. And I think it has to do a lot with the history of America, right? There is this inherent race relation historical aspect of America that can't go denied, and it's always been, I'd say, the most divisive aspect of American history. And what we're seeing now is it's successfully being used to manipulate the populations, as you've stated, creating this kind of bipolar or binary relationship between black and white, and causing divide and causing discontent. But overall, it's unfortunate because whichever side people stand on, we have to be aware that there has and always is going to be a type of racial, I'd say almost warfare in America, just based on the history and the lack of really addressing what's happened over time, especially with slavery, Jim Crow, and all of these different discriminatory and oppressive systems that have always been a hallmark of American structure. And spiritually, I definitely see this as just another part of nature of man, the fallen nature of the flesh. But it's interesting how it's being used so successfully today. And it's not to say that there aren't real problems, because I personally believe BLM uh, a false paradigm. I believe it's a part of Central Intelligence. Actually, I'm sure it is. It's promoted and funded by NGOs that are globalist organizations. But I will say, though they are definitely fighting for a war that's not the right war, it's unfortunate that real issues, mainly black oppression, historically, real issues like this are actually being utilized, or should I say manipulated,
Oh
or
yeah.
the real issues are being ignored, what
Yes.
sucks about this is it with BLM and all of these false paradigms, it makes it waters down the real issues that are happening in the black community, and it's watering down the real issues that the black population needs to address. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate because a lot of people take the side of, this is all a psyop, but what at the end of the day, it really hurts the true issues that need to be addressed in the black community. And that's the part that I find most unfortunate, that our culture is being ripped to shreds, but at the same time there are real issues that are
Yeah.
historical and that need to be addressed.
Tulsa.
Tulsa, and many others,
Many others.
but
Sure.
we have the wrong people and the wrong organizations holding the leadership role in the conversation. And not only do we have the wrong people leading the conversation, but they're addressing the wrong issues and they're going about it the wrong way. I mean,
They're all Boule Freemasons who are leading the charge. It seems,
yeah.
Sharpton
Oh
and
man,
Jackson.
it's just sick. And the response, having people bow down, almost this role reversal, this power shift. That's not how you get equality. In fact, it reminds me of third wave, or someone even call it fourth wave feminism, where it's really not about equality. It's about switching the roles and maintaining a type of power over the other. And when you follow the logic of that, it's really just going to become a cycle. Because at one point, if you because this is really turning out to be a type of black dominance through this BLM, which is the wrong way to go. And if you follow this type of logic, eventually the black movement will be the oppressors and the white population will be the oppressed, and then the whole situation will shift into the opposite direction, and it will just continue and it will never end. So when you look at it logically, you could definitely see that this is really going nowhere, and it's only going to continue to bring more terror and more destruction. And I personally believe that's their goal from the outset.
Yeah, man, that's great, and thanks for that. And I always look at like the racist issue they keep pushing and all that these days. Again, they're always giving these worldly answers to spiritual issues. So instead of addressing this, that we should all be brothers and sisters in Christ, they're going to make a new Friends series with an all-black cast, or right, or Wakanda, that movie Black Panther, fast tracked, greenlit, tons of awards. This stuff that's so surface and dumb that even I'm sure the people in the community are looking at like, really,
Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah.
It's compensatory. It's not really addressing issues. It's not really rehabilitating anything. It's compensatory. You're compensating. In fact, you're overcompensating, and you're creating this false sense of reality through this just over exaggerated representation culture and inclusivity culture. It's very emotional. It's very emotive. And at the end of the day, it's counterfactual, and that creates it not only creates discontent from the opposite end, you create new racists and new negative perspectives regarding Black people from the other end, because they feel that they're being imposed upon. But you also create confusion within the culture that you're trying to uplift. You create these misconceptions of self, where they feel they have these exaggerated, grandiose senses of self, because they're using this perspective of oppression as some means to dominate the world. Or I've been hurt, so now we must conquer.
Dominating again? Who's dominating again? Who are we talking about?
We have this situation with Black Lives Matter and a lot of the neo.
No, I understand, but I mean, who is it? Are they dominating?
No, it seems as if they are trying to create a movement where they can dominate society. They're like forcing.
I mean, because here's the thing, right? Is that I don't know what their motivations are. I also don't know what their struggles are. I know from where I grew up, I know that racism it's a real thing, and I've seen a lot of my friends, go through some really tough things that I didn't have to go through. So I know that there is an issue. I mean, there is. I think that there's a better way to handle all of it, but I also don't think that if people are involved in a movement and a lot of voices come out against that movement as a way to say that they're going to now dominate us and they're going to oppress us and all that, I think, and that's what a lot of people are saying, and I get it, but you do know that this is a very small little, it's just as small as the people that are really, really hurting other people, but they're trying to get everybody to talk this way. They're trying to get everybody to hate everybody.
Absolutely.
So when we say these things, I am not in any way gonna lend my voice to any, because I don't understand it. But what I do know is love. And I do know that love is patient, it's kind, it endures, it doesn't hold past wrongs against people. It's like we have to find a way to embrace people and love them and lead them out by giving them the truth of God, which is, you're me, I'm you. What I do to you, I do to me. So if I see you and I fear that you are going to hurt me and you're going to rise up and somehow dominate me, then I'm going to have an innate prejudice toward you.
Yeah, but
that's pretty much what I'm saying right there.
Yeah,
overall,
and
the entire movement, it's a microcosm. And this is absolutely correct. It's a very small portion of not just the society, but the Black population. BLM does not represent the Black population, so-called, and that's the problem here.
But they think it does. This is my point, is they think it does. I'm not in disagreement with, I understand who funds these organizations. I understand that they're putting the bricks down, and I understand that, people that are damaging things aren't necessarily Black at all.
Yes.
A lot of we see this, people with headsets. We see it. We understand it's being instigated, but we have to also understand that there are a lot of people that are hurting. And for the first time, they feel like, okay, maybe there's going to be some change and maybe this is the way to do it. So what we have to understand is they don't understand. Okay. They're just being told, so we
Jacob, let me throw this out. Casey, join in. I was going to go to you next, Casey. Sorry, but we're going to roll with it. But Jacob, let me throw this out there then, because I was actually thinking about this just a few days ago. So they have this Chaz group in Seattle, right? It's run by a warlord, so they say, da da da. But I thought, what if you just went there in faith, prayed about it on your own? I thought, what if I just went there? What if I can go there by myself,
How cool would
not
that
for
be?
cameras or nothing? Go to the front, say, may I speak to your leader? Talk to the guy for like 5 or 10 minutes and just talk to him about Christ and say, hey man, can we turn this towards real love and towards Christ and like loving each other beyond colors and no more violence and anger? I mean, maybe we need to start doing things like that. Guys, anything? Go ahead.
There was
All of you.
There was already a preacher that was assaulted there, actually yesterday.
Oh no, I saw once again. I saw
But I don't
that.
think I don't think he went about it the right way,
He
personally.
didn't. Right. You're right. He didn't. And you know,
He's
KJ,
probably CIA for all we know, but go ahead.
that's my point. That's my point. It's like what, you know, KJ, when you and I talk, it's like honeypots. How many times do we say it's a honeypot? Don't go there.
Yep, it's a trap.
You know, and it's like even talking about this right now, all the good that could come out of this video, if one thing is said the wrong way and not clarified, it can be taken and twisted. And next thing you know, all the good that we do just talking here today, all gone. And then more hate comes out of it. And I don't understand it. I just know that God is working right now. It doesn't seem like he's working, but he is. And I do believe voices are going to rise up, and I do believe that people are going to come together. It's going to happen because I did this thing called one woe is past, another two to come. Well, the second one came. We got another one after this because we're going to have something.
Well, yeah,
because nobody's getting on.
It's not going to come from organized churches. I've talked about that already. They're not doing anything, you know, but it's going to have to come from the people somehow. Casey, please join in, man. We hit a lot of notes there. What are your thoughts, please?
Well, I think how Jacob opened the show with the exodus out of America and a spiritual exodus. And I really think that resonates with me because we were looking at the same thing, those two crossing eclipses, and we looked at the Mississippi River Valley and we superimposed it over the Nile Delta. And we started seeing all of the same cities like Cairo and Memphis, basically overlaying in the exact same spots that you would see in the Nile Delta.
Oh, they do that, right?
The same cities actually appear in the Mississippi River Delta. So what this is all about is it's slavery. It's about putting all of us back in bondage, just like the ancient Hebrews. And you're absolutely right. You know, when the very last plague in Egypt was the postmarking of the post and lintel, and they had to be marked with the blood of the lamb, right? And this was the very first Passover. And because the Pharaoh failed to mark his posts, the firstborn were killed. Well, they want our firstborn. They want to bruise our firstborn in the heel with the prick test, right? Take their blood, give them the VCs, and they want to basically claim through the blood of that original child that was sacrificed in 1966 through the fetal cell line. They want to re-inject that back into us, and they want to give us the mark of the beast instead of the postmark to be passed over by the blood of the lamb. So this stuff goes very, very deep. Also, Jacob mentioned the rainbow. Did you know that a rainbow can only be viewed at 42 degrees, which just also so happens to be exactly one God hour, because God, one day is 1,000 years. Well, in 1 hour, that would be exactly 42 years old.
You're kidding.
So, yeah.
You know why I say that? Isn't that in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Isn't that the answer to the eternal question is 42? Is that the right number? Y'all can look it up in chat, but yeah, I was curious. Okay, go ahead, man. That's interesting.
Right. And these eclipses are very important as well, because it seemed as though this whole CV thing was kicked off by an eclipse that occurred the day after Apollo's birthday, which was December 26th. That was the very first day that they basically named the CV in China. And it was weird because that eclipse actually formed a smiley face right underneath China. It went through Malaysia. It formed a smiley face right underneath China. And then all of a sudden I started looking back in film history, and you could see how smiley faces became basically the metaphor for something that is multiplying out of control and causing spamdemic and all these things, right?
Wow. I wonder if that's connected to the smiley face killer. Maybe I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead.
That's part of it. Also, the film The Howling, remember the calling card was a smiley face sticker. And of course, you could be infected, right, with the howling blood if you were scratched or bitten. And then you saw the same thing in Gremlins. There was a smiley face sticker on the refrigerator. And of course, when you throw water on a gremlin, what do? They multiply out of control. So all of this goes back to the V word, right? And so this is some of the stuff we were covering too, but there's an extra component to it because we actually kind of foreshadowed this whole spamdemic because we were talking about how NASA had released these balloons with this bacteria on them to see what kind of effect that they would have up in the upper atmosphere, in the stratosphere, with ultraviolet radiation, right? From the eclipse, from the corona of the eclipse, right? And so we were looking at that because they launched these balloons, and I call them the 99 red balloons, right along the eclipse path, going from the 33rd state of Oregon all the way to the 33rd parallel, South Carolina. And they launched these balloons all across the United States. And I think that was a foreshadowing to the spamdemic we're going through right now.
Man, that's good stuff. Go ahead, guys. What do you think about that? Anything?
That's just terrifying. I love it.
I do too, because I love that. That's really what's happening is that all the threads are coming together. You know, it's all coming together, and it's we all see it in different ways, and it's fantastic. Even you're mentioning, you know, the way that they set things up, even through ley lines and you know, with the stars and everything. And there's the 33rd parallel. You know, most of the pyramids are on the 33rd parallel. We know about that. 33 has been encoded in everything that's happening, even up to now. They just canceled Cops, the TV show, because of all the BLM madness, and they canceled it after 33 years. You know, so it's
Wow.
so when I see things like this, I continually, in a spiritual sense, understand this is all meant to happen. This is a part of the plan. Several years ago, I made a few videos on Donald Trump. In fact, here's something I feel we should all do, and I haven't done recently, but revisit I Pet Goat 2 and also revisit The Economist magazine covers with Trump. Because I feel like there's a lot going on there.
Well,
Go
you know
ahead,
what's, I got to tell you, when it's strange. Okay, let's talk strange, right? They're putting the fruit bat on the coin, the quarter. You know that? That's great, right? And they announced it. They I mean, what are the chances, right? And on that Economist magazine cover, I don't know if you know this, they were making the rounds that, you know, this whole thing, you know, they call the virus the crown, right? That this whole thing came from either, you know, a fruit bat, right? Or here's the other one, a pangolin. Do you know what it's like an anteater?
Well, very random creature, but
very random creature. What's that doing on the Economist magazine for 2019? The pangolin. What's it doing there? And what are the four horsemen of the apocalypse doing there on that magazine when you got the four white horsemen bringing the come on. It's it's all so strange.
There was tons of white horse symbolism with the crown virus. I've covered that. Yeah, man, it's all over the place. I mean, go ahead.
The horse is very important because it appeared in the film I Am Legend. Remember when Will Smith used the horse, which was the Joker, right? Which is the Trump card. He put that bookmark inside the almanac, and it was the day of the winter solstice. It was December 21st. And this was all foreshadowing of what we're going through right now. You mentioned the film The Joker, and you were going to take another look at it, KJ. Well, there's a scene at the very end where, remember, he's in the cop car. He's about ready to go to jail, and he gets rammed by the ambulance, remember, and it flips the car over. Well, when he gets out of the cop car, you can see what appears to be the rays of a sun on a sign behind him, and the camera pans around as he's crowned with the rays of the sun. So this is all Apollo worship.
Wow, good one.
Just before that, you'll see a sign, and it says Ace in the Hole. Well, I looked up Ace in the Hole, and it's the Trump card. Now, this movie released on October 4th, 88 days before the end of the year. And of course, in Back to the Future, you have to hit 88 miles an hour at 10:04, right? On the clock in order to jump through time. And of course, Biff ties into all of this. Lorraine Baines, McFly, LBM, BLM.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, 88 is really huge. You know,
I'm going off on a weird tangent, but I just watched a movie the other day. It reminded me of something. When I did my video on the Joker, One thing he does is after his first murder, he goes into the bathroom and he dances on the black and white tiles. And I've shown that that's the sacrifice on the Masonic floor. Okay, and I just watched a movie called The Hunt, which is total programming.
Oh
but
my
it's
God! How'd you
right where
watch
it's left.
that? How did you do it?
I was curious. You hear all the hoopla, so I checked it out. It was fairly well balanced. In fact, in one way, I'd say it went more right, if you will, to left. But regardless, and that stuff's all whatever, a trick anyway. We get it. But at the very end of the movie, the final kill takes place on a Masonic floor, but it's black and white without tiles. They're hexagons of Saturn, and where the girl finishes her final kill and lays back on the tiled floor, they have two tiles that are yellow just above her head to represent Lucifer, of course, their sun god. So just off the top of my head, throwing it out there. Hey, Days, you've been a little quiet. Anything you want to add in here?
Oh, I was just going to add on to what Casey was bringing up. It was really good, this idea of the 88, which is so significant, especially in this recent psyop with Floyd. The 8 minutes on the knee on the neck. He wore number 88 on his football jersey that they're showing all over the news. I think Chauvin is 44 in numerology, which is 8, and also 44 is kill in gematria. So it's interesting how this 8 seems to be popping up all over the place, and I believe 8 is a symbol of completion. So this kind of gives you the idea of this is completing something, or we're going into the next stage. The one era is being completed, right? We're stepping into this new era, and I think that's really the 21st century, of course, in the fourth industrial revolution, as they call it, and this new age, right? The real new age, not the new age the 70s spoke of, but the actual new age that is pretty much bringing us into the next stage of the natural man. And it's fascinating how all of this pops up. I'm not really super versed in all of the esoterics, but I do find them very interesting.
Yeah, when you think of the Ouroboros, and as you said, that's a symbol of everything completing, or the end of time.
I can't get away from it, brother.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it.
Well, I just did a video, and I showed people in there that there's a certain type of UFO that people have been seeing. And it's maybe 12 times they filmed it throughout the years, and it looks like a black ring Ouroboros smoke ring in the sky. But then people have debunked that, or tried to debunk it by saying it's just these pyrotechnics or whatever. I've done videos showing the difference between these things. I feel they also showed up in Westworld season 3 recently.
Yes, man.
Right?
And you love Westworld. You do some great stuff on Westworld.
There's a lot there.
The Corona right there.
Oh, well, go ahead. I didn't miss that part. Where's the Corona in that?
Oh my God! The computer, all the ads it was the Corona, and it turns into the Ouroboros, but it was a Corona.
Right. They show the Earth and what it looks to be the Earth, and you could see I guess you could call them 5G whiz waves going all around the planet, and that's how Rehoboam, the artificial intelligence, which is 19, right?
Yeah,
19. That's how he tracks what they call like if you go off the script or whatever, and they have to correct that by sending out minions to like take somebody out or whatever. But yeah, that was a Corona.
Dang, good catch. Well, that's why I knew there was something there. Again, for years I've had people, oh, you shut up, it's just pyrotechnics. I'm like, no, this is different, and I feel it may be spiritual. And the first sighting I found was in 1953 or 7 in a military base, and that's after Operation Paperclip, when all the Nazi scientists came over and our scientists started dealing with the occult stuff, and then we had Area 51. So again, this is just the way I think, but I wonder if maybe it is some spiritual kind of manifestation that's come out showing us the end of time is near. I mean, I just wonder about these things. I don't know, but
you know what's coming up on Father's Day, right?
What's that?
A huge annular eclipse, Ring of Fire.
Oh, go ahead and tell me.
Ouroboros, man. Yeah, you didn't hear about the Mayan. You didn't see. I just did a
video. I did see your video on, and if people haven't heard, now they're saying the Mayan calendar was. Go ahead, you tell them.
Yeah, well, so basically the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, they missed 11 days. If you add it all up, really, we're not in June. We shouldn't be in June. We should be in December. We're not in 2020. We should be 2012. So really, the world is supposed to come to an end on Father's Day, which, by the way, also happens to be coming off of the summer solstice, which, by the way, Stonehenge for the very first time is going to be live streamed everywhere in the world, which I think
I have
is
not
just,
heard that.
Oh yeah, I think it's so cool. It's just so interesting.
They're putting it so right in our face, man.
Well,
Just
so that's the
rituals.
Ouroboros. I can't get away from it. I've included the Ouroboros in, I can't tell you how many videos recently. All the there's a parallel universe which works in reverse. That was the other one, from the neutrinos coming from Antarctica. This is all science, right? So you have the Ouroboros there. You have the Ouroboros. You have the fact that we're basically coming to an end of a cycle, coming into a new day, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good way to see it.
But I mean, it happens, there's life, there's death, there's rebirth. That's what that whole thing symbolizes. What I think is interesting is they have this, this is kind of cool, is they have this, there's this new sign. It's the 13th astrological sign. Has anybody heard about this?
No, I haven't.
Ophiuchus. So a couple of years ago, because of the Earth, shifting on its axis and everything else, there is now a 13th constellation. This is like a real legit thing. We learned about it a couple of years ago. But what was strange about this was it was happening around the same time as this sign in the heavens that I was talking about earlier. So you have this picture of Christ being birthed within everyone, right? Christ in you, the hope of glory. We have this day, the book of Joel, that speaks of the day when, God's kingdom comes to earth, right? We're the beginning of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. In the beginning of a 1,000-year reign, there's going to be some upheaval. And I think that's what we're in right now. Is I think we're in the beginning of it. We're coming out of a time of tribulation, and it's just if you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, let me throw this out at y'all, and actually, Days may want to throw in on this in a second too. But that's the big question: is what's it all going to look like? Are we going to see the system completely collapse and the phoenix rise from the ashes and the Antichrist be revealed? Or is there some other way that, that Trump and his people are going to win this and defeat something and, whatever else, because that's a big narrative. There's have you ever heard of this guy? He even calls himself Prophet Mark Taylor. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So the Prophet Mark Taylor, and I'm not saying anything bad about the guy. I really don't know much about him, but he's a firefighter. And many years ago, he wrote a book. He had a prophecy that Trump would be president, like many years before it happened. And he's seen a lot of things that have come to pass. He does his own shows. I think he does some podcasts with people from time to time. But his whole angle is that, Trump truly was chosen by God, which in a weird way, I'm with some of that. Not to say Trump's the good guy necessarily, but, that we needed him as kind of a restrainer for a while. But then again, he feels like Trump is the good guy and that he's going to defeat the deep state, which I call the Illuminati, but he's going to defeat them. And there's going to be justice. And then I don't know what his thoughts are. And after that, but I mean, the Bible tells us that there has to come a period where the Antichrist is revealed and makes war with the saints.
Oh, well, this is what this whole symbol of the sign is speaking about. The Ophiuchus is a picture of Christ wrestling, get this, the dragon, the Ouroboros. Wrestling it, fighting it. It's the man. And here's the best part is right now, his foot is at what they call the gateway of the gods. So basically, we're at the door. I stand at the door knocking. All right, now here's where it gets really weird. You want to talk about a bottomless pit, right? Well, I always thought that it was more allegorical because a bottomless pit would be, it has no Christ because Christ is the foundation. So if you have no truth, it's bottomless. There's no end to the lies that you can be sucked out of. But there is a literal bottomless pit, and we literally took a picture of it. It's a black hole, right? This is where it gets really weird. So, okay, now this is where it gets weird. I don't know if you remember that crazy tunnel opening, the devil tunnel opening.
You mean in Gothard?
Tunnel?
Oh yeah,
my goodness,
yeah, I covered it.
Where they were praising the coming of the Antichrist, right? Where they were bringing in the birth of the Antichrist, and time goes backwards, and all the heads of state they bow. Now, here's what's weird. I did a show about this, and I talked about the bottomless pit opening, and that it was going to, like a furnace, like all the smoke was going to come out of it. That's from the Book of Revelation. I put that in my video back then when the Gothard Tunnel happened, but we didn't have a picture of the black hole yet. Turns out Cut to, we just found out that black hole, it opened up after 1,000 years, like smoke from a furnace, and blasted a bunch of particle energy about like 10 galaxies wide through guess who? Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus,
Really?
Christ.
Wow.
Yeah. That's like, that literally played out. Now, here's the weird. So I do a show about this. I'm going, oh my goodness. Because I was in Revelation 12, 13. I said, well, this happens back here. So it would have had to happen back in like 2016 or 17. And I go back and I'm like, oh my goodness. They knew about the black hole. They knew about what was going on. It's been opened, right? It's been opened. And right now we're seeing the effects of it. The devil has a short time, right? God's going to make quick work of this. Why do you think people are acting so crazy right now? This is not a literal thing. This is a spiritual war. And God, Jesus says, my words are spirit and they are truth, right? The dragon has flooded the earth with lies. Everything you hear is a lie, fake news. You don't know what to believe. You'll end up killing your neighbor or attacking your friend because your lies that you believe. The dragon has flooded the earth, man. But we're those that are in the ark. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah, man. I do.
It's crazy how it's playing out in the stars. It's playing out in the world. It's playing out everywhere.
Everywhere. It's almost as if it sometimes reminds me, going off on a tangent, but I don't do the kind of psychedelics that I used to when I was a young man. When I was like a teenager, late teens, I kind of tried everything, I think. But there's certain psychedelics you can do where you can literally see the strands of reality around you. Some of you have experienced that before. I feel like all of that is like actually manifesting before our eyes in a way that all truth in that sense is coming out. Days, any thoughts on any of this? What do you think on all that? What Jacob was talking about? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's so much going on right now. It's really hard to keep up with all of it, honestly. And these are really good points brought up. It just makes me question, where does CERN play into all of this? I'd love to hear some views on that.
Right on, dude.
I've definitely covered it a lot. I know Jacob has. Casey, I know you've covered some things on CERN, but what are your thoughts on what do you think CERN has to do with all this?
Well, I think CERN is pretty much the backbone of artificial intelligence. And speaking of CERN, it's basically, I believe that we're reaching some kind of technological singularity. And, all the signs are there. Basically, we've had a huge ramping up of the release of technology, way beyond what the normal rate of discoveries are. And now we're in the final ages of Earth. The Bible follows a pretty specific historical path. And the amazing thing about it is that across more than 66 books and dozens of authors, we have a pattern that emerges that seems to mirror the Earth ages, the 2,000-year Earth ages that are in the zodiac. Now, listen, this is crazy because the Earth seemed to start in the age of Gemini with Cain and Abel and Adam and Eve. So we had pairs. And if you look back at the first 7 generations of the bloodlines in Cain's bloodline and Adam's bloodline, and you look at the names of those first 7 patriarchs, they seem to almost have the same name, but on different sides of the bloodline. They were Gemini twins. And then we entered the age of Taurus, where they were worshiping the Apis bull. And you can look back in biblical history and see how these patterns overlap exactly the 2,000-year period that was appearing on the horizon in the sky through procession. And then we entered the age of Aries, where there were sacrificial lambs and goats. And then finally we got to Jesus' age, and that's Pisces, the 2 fish. And what did Jesus do? He fed a crowd with 2 fish. And all of many of his miracles had to do with fish, like casting the net to the right side to catch 153 fish, which is, of course, is the Vesica Pisces, which is the actual formula inside of the Vesica Pisces. It actually encodes the number 153. But here's where things get interesting, because during the Passover, just before the Passover, one of the disciples asked Jesus, "Where do we go to prepare for the Passover?" And Jesus said to him, "Go into the upper room and find the man bearing the water jug." And of course, that would be Aquarius. And that's the age we're in right now. So he's coming, you guys. It's going to be like now. It's like any day now.
Man, I'm glad you said that. And I'll throw this out to you guys. We'll go to days next, but sometimes it's hard for me to just, and I do it my own way, but just to tell people, wow, this is what I'm feeling as far as how soon it can be, because I don't want to be a predictor at times. None of us do. But we know the season we're in. And wow, even last night, having dinner with some friends, one of my friends is married to a police officer, just talking to her about what's going on. And I was just thinking, wow, I mean, it is really coming fast. I have to, sometimes I feel like I got to snap out of it because I get so deep in my mind on different subjects. Sometimes it's hard to, that's why I need to do my shows every week and cover all the topics, because it helps me to remember as well. Wow, look how quick this is accelerating. But yeah, that's really the key. And if anybody's out there listening, none of us are affiliated with churches or religion or like religious organizations. We're all individuals who follow Christ, love Christ, believe God, believe the word, everything else. Know that the devil runs this joint. And so if you don't know, it's very simple. You have to admit you're a sinner. It can be tough sometimes. Admit you're a sinner. Say, Father, I understand the sacrifice that Jesus made for me and what that really means. It's to cleanse me of my sins. You're free from sin through grace. It's not a license to sin. There's an argument there, but people still will do things. It's still a growing process. And just work on your own relationship with the Lord through Christ. Don't hate yourself too much for being weak, because we all are. And I hope that helps you. But guys, go ahead, Days. Anything on that?
No, I think you're really touching on something important here. Clearly, this is a time of transition, right? This is a time for a new age. Not only are we going into a new type of society, a new type of human collective, as it were, we're also changing spiritually. A lot of people are going to the dark side, and a lot of people are coming to the truth. And I think it's really important that we address this fact that though a lot of horrible things are happening, a lot of darkness is going on, this is actually an opportunity for the Most High to bring together his flock, right? This is a time for us to get right with God. This is a time for us to repent and come back to the truth if we've left or discovered the truth for the first time. And it's, of course, we don't know the time or the hour, but it's very clear that things are ramping up. He is obviously speeding up time. And we just have to really prepare for what's next spiritually. And I'd say faith is the most important thing at this time. Also, I think it's important for us to realize, especially some of us who might be suffering depression or becoming down because of this. Some of us have lost our jobs. Some of us have lost friendships in relationships with family. I think it's really important to realize that you were born for this time. We were built for this time, and God created us all to be here, living, interacting, and engaging in this very moment. So if you can hold that in your heart, I think it could definitely bring some clarity, because these are dark times, but it's all for the Most High God's glory and by His will.
Yeah, man, and you cover a lot of, we all cover similar topics, and you'll cover a lot of the social movements as well, and what's happening spiritually there, and I'm right there with you. Even talking about how some of these groups really want to dominate us. I'm with you on that, because there's videos coming out now of elements of these groups, BLM or whatever, making white people bend down, specifically white women, and like kiss their boots, lick their boots, and ask for forgiveness. But now my thing is to look beyond the racial aspects of all this and look at the spiritual aspects and where this is leading, and the whole bending a knee thing. My eyes, the first time I saw that, with especially our senators doing that, total, was appropriation as well as virtue signaling, but it was sickening. But these are people, I feel, and that's a part of that spirit, that are ready to bend the knee to the Antichrist. And that's where I feel Trump really is. I don't want to be scary and negative, but I keep wondering, how are they going to take this guy out? Because I feel like it could be anything, any day now. They could do anything they want. And I'm kind of looking for Obama perhaps to come back. That's just been lately. I've been thinking about that. But Jacob, I'll jump to you, sir. What do you think about this?
So much better is if they could wash another's foot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like instead of this, like to wash another's feet. Because see, here's the thing, is that the greatest thing that you can do for another person is to serve them. And when you're having other people serve you, there's no real reward in that. You know, there's no real joy in just being served all the time, because then what you do is you have a lack of love, because ultimately love is all that matters, right? And earlier you were talking about how the world is just lost, and people are just, you said they're bending the knee to this. Yes, I think that I have a very different opinion about the mark of the beast and everything else.
There are no different opinions here, Jacob. We will all line up. I'm just kidding, man. Go ahead.
No. I mean, I just, I think that it's quite obvious that the mark of the beast is everywhere already. That's the mark of the beast. It's quite obvious.
But you don't feel that it is tied in with with Bill Gates and the vaccines? You don't think that'll be a part of it?
Listen, it's all okay. So we've talked about this before. Is that, yes, for people that can't understand things spiritually, it'll literally have to be something that they can tangibly wrap their mind around and then realize they've just lost their freedom. But really, God is looking to your heart. The flesh profits nothing. The outward man, it doesn't matter. What matters is a person's heart. And the problem is right now, everybody is bending their knee to the beast system. The beast is already in charge of what's going on. But here's the good news, that Christ is coming. And with the brightness of Christ coming, Christ, the power and wisdom of God, that's what scripture says, the brightness of this destroys the work of the Antichrist, destroys it, wipes it away. So earlier, when you were saying about people being possessed by devils, people are possessed by devils. Jesus said, my words are spirit and they are truth. So a devil would be a lie, right? Because the father of all lies is the devil. So a devil would be a lie that comes from the mouth of the devil. So what we have the power to do, and I don't think people are getting this, is that we have the power to encourage people with the truth, to cast out devils. There can be somebody that thinks the wrong way, and you speak the truth of God to them, and you have cast out that devil. We have been given, the disciples were given this power back then. We have been given this power through the Holy Spirit, but who's exercising it? I see a lot of hate going around. I don't see a lot of healing. And that's why it's important to be on shows like this, because people don't hear it enough, KJ.
Everything they do is Christ mockery. And what we're going through right now are the temptations of Christ. He fasted Food shortages. He went to Mount Quarantine. It's
Mount Quarantine,
Mount Quarantina, where the devil asked him to turn stones into bread. Why do you think they have this bread baking meme going on with the quarantine? And then what else happened? The 12 disciples. That's the $1,200 checks that they sent out. And then what else happened? There was the act of worship, bending the knee, after he was shown all of the kingdoms of the world. And the very last one would be jumping off of the pinnacle of the temple, which is the mass S word, we'll call it. We can't say that word on YouTube anymore, which is going to occur after all the anguish of all the small businesses that have lost everything.
Well, I don't want that to happen. I want to see people come to the knowledge of the truth. In the end of the story, I think people forget the end of the story. The end of the story is God's creation is finished in victory. I think that if enough people share the truth of God, which is, it's love. It's, you have to do unto others as you want done to yourself. If we can do this, if we can get people and we can equip them to understand that those negative thoughts they have in their head, that's not them. Telling you to hurt somebody, telling you to hate somebody, telling you to fear somebody, that's not you. These are thoughts that have been programmed into you from all these movies like KJ does all these shows on.
Well, that's a good point, but there's sometimes where I seriously wonder, because, and you guys help me out with this, I'd like to hear all of your thoughts, but are some people too far gone? Is it a wheat and a tear type situation, which Jesus talked about? Are there beings around us, and these, we may see them as narcissists or psychopaths or serial killers, but are there people that are beyond reach? And I know that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to reach them all, but I wonder that sometimes. And then when I see what's happening now manifesting through so many people, this is my own personal battle, is to think, are they all just too far gone, or can I still reach them somehow? When like I told you earlier, I'm not joking around. I've really been thinking about what if things continually get crazier and just more chaotic.
And they will.
Well, yeah, they will. What if it's time for us to like start making a move outside of this? It's not something I make a video on or broadcast, but maybe start going to these places full on in faith, praying about it in love and kindness, not wearing shirts with crosses and all this other stuff, but just going up as just who you are and talking to these people about Christ for 5-10 minutes, saying, I come to you in love, man. I love you. I don't mean any harm. Can we try to look at this like through these eyes, and maybe you can see? What do you guys think? Am I being cuckoo here? What's going on?
No, you sound like one of Paul's students when they were like, hey man, they're too far gone. They're done. And Paul's like, look, I don't want you to be ignorant of this. Blindness in part has happened to Israel, so we can graft in the Gentiles. Do not think that just because you know and you understand the love of God, that they're like, doing terrible things, that they're out. No one is going to get to the kingdom. He says, we shall no way precede them until all Israel shall be saved. God's doing a work. He hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he wouldn't let Israel go. Pharaoh could have allowed Israel to be set free and not have the deal with the plagues. We could have, unless God wanted to show his great and powerful mercy. And that's what's going to happen, is God is moving. This is the Exodus, right? God hardened Pharaoh's heart. People's hearts are being hardened, but they're not too far gone, because God's arm is not slack that it cannot save. It's his will that all be saved. And out of everyone that God gave the Son to save, he lost how many? Not one, save the Antichrist, the son of perdition. So
But I feel like spiritually, people are still in bondage. I mean,
heck yeah.
everything that they've asked us to do, separating ourselves from the sick instead of being out amongst the sick, it's just like Christians just gave in. And we need to be free from that. We need to break away from that. And I was very saddened to see all my Christian brothers and sisters just give in to what we're all going through right now. We should have
to follow the law.
Yeah, and it's
which by the way, the scriptures say very, very clearly, because God created the laws. God put the people in charge that are, even if they're monsters, so long as it does not break the rule of God, which means to love, so long as it doesn't wear a mask when you go buy something, you can't follow the law. That's God saying you must follow the law. Otherwise, what happens? You have a confrontation with somebody. Otherwise, because you go in there with pride saying, I'm not going to wear a mask. I don't care if it's the law. That violates my rights. Next thing you know, you're coming to somebody. They say, you can't come into the store. And then you're saying, don't tell me I can't come into the store. It's my right to come into the store.
Well, it doesn't have to be like that, though. I've been going in and out of stores with no mask.
Well, as long as they're okay with it. I'm not saying everybody. What I'm saying is a lot of people right now are not following the law. And I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm going to follow what the rule of law is, as long as God says to follow things that are not breaking his law, which is love. And you're not loving somebody if you're not going to make the people around you more comfortable, because they're not strong enough to understand.
Well, what about following Jesus' example, which he went out amongst the sick? And we're here, we all are stuck in our homes.
Yeah.
I'm amongst the sick every single day of the week. So are you. Right now, we're amongst 2,000, almost 2,600 people. I'm sure some of them are sick. I got criticized because there were pastors that were bringing people in, and a lot of people died because of this. They were saying, no. Right now, I have a little insight into the whole Christian world, because I was a TV writer for a huge Christian television network, and I know all these big hot shots, right? And it was one of those big hot shots that was making such a big stink and making everybody break God's law, and people died because of it. And you know why? Because it's harder to tithe over the internet than it is in person with cash. That's the truth. And that's what God was showing everybody. You think that the enemy's doing all this? The enemy's doing it because God allows it, just like he allowed the enemy to torment and torture Job. Same reason, because we have forgotten our first love, man. And we think we know it all. And I don't know nothing. I have gotten to a point in my life where I know nothing. but I have faith, and I've been talking for years about where we were going. And now, I mean, I can't help but see everybody around me just acting mad. And I'm just like, please come to the channel. Will you please?
I'll
You
throw
can
this.
resist with the
I'll
love.
throw this out that like, and maybe this is my own thing, and I'm a bit of a. Sometimes I feel like a nihilist, but it's a nihilist towards the beast system. So in a lot of ways, I just don't want to comply. You know, I don't wear a mask. When I go to my parents' house, I will for them because they're in their 80s and they're very worried about this still, unfortunately. And even with that, I choose my battles. I'm not going to fight with them over this. If they want me to wear a mask, I will. But yeah, I typically personally don't. And I also feel like there's such a spread of lawlessness now that I keep wondering. I'm with you though on that, Jay. Like I'm an ex-military guy. I was active duty 8 years. I still have that side of me that I respect my country and I, love the people, of course, and believe in the Constitution. So I'm hoping that can pan out. I don't want to be a predictor and say this is finally it, but it feels like this is it. And it feels like it's beyond, of course, political parties. Now it's a spirit. And we see this. Some people are completely turned over now to just wickedness, it feels. So I pray every day about, I don't know if I'm going to get raptured away, but I pray if there is a catching way, I get to go. But if not, I'll be here. But I don't feel like I want to be hiding just in the woods because I'm not afraid to die. I feel like if there's a bigger role for us, I'm totally cool with that. If that makes sense. Am I rambling? Anybody with me?
Not at all. I mean,
Days,
listen, I'm even looking at the chat, and a lot of people, I get I get beat up over this. People like, oh, you think that the thing's real? You're pushing this, you're pushing that, and it's like, doesn't anybody even understand? Don't we see what we're doing to each other? It gets me, man. But let me tell you where I'm going to stop talking.
no, go ahead, because I feel you, Jacob. I understand.
I
And
see
please go ahead and explain.
Here's the good news, okay? Because what I've been doing, what I'm trying to do, right? Because we were given the power to cast out, to heal. So I've been little by little, I do this, KJ. I've been saying prayers online. So I've been over the last couple of weeks been saying things like, it's going to mutate down. That's right, Lord. We know it's going to be weaker. We're going to hear it's going to be weaker. We're going to hear that it's going to be weaker. So I'm putting it out there because the plague that we're in right now, guess what happens? They pray, they humble themselves, and God's like, hey, I'll get rid of that plague. And then they mess up again. He brings another plague on them. So this plague has to somehow fizzle out, So it's like, if it does, and I'm hoping it does, this is where I think it's going, because I
feel like it already did, honestly.
I know I do too. I do too. And I don't want to say that because I'm not a doctor, but I do too. And that's why nobody's going to have to worry about this vaccine, because I have been actively working with the Lord to make sure that Bill Gates isn't going to get nothing.
I understand, Van. Days, jump in here. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, it's interesting points. I think a lot of this is really coming down to biblical interpretation and the dynamics of that, and that always can be an interesting situation. But I think overall, it's important to remember that in those days, even the elect will be deceived. So I think we have to be careful in that sense and just really try to, of course, individually, I'd say first and foremost, individually get right spiritually, and try to spread the gospel. Try, as Jacob has mentioned, try to get the truth out there. Try to inspire. Try to.
How do we do that, though? What do you think, man? I mean, because look at the crazy censorship now, and this is just. I'm just from my angle here. I mean, just in the last 6 months, I had Instagram ban a video because I had Illuminati in the title. I had Vimeo take 2 of my channels down that had almost all of my original videos from my website. And then I had Spreadshirt, who I just launched a merchandise thing. They banned half of the designs, including some designs that were sent by artists themselves. And so my thing is, when I see it from my angle, it's like it's an obvious spreading, and I see it as a spirit. I always call it an antichrist spirit. Are you with me on all this? But what's the answer? I mean, what do you think the answer is to get our word out there? How do we do it? And do you think it's getting close to where we might need to start going out in the world and talking? I don't know.
It's gonna get there. We're definitely not there just yet. We still have the internet. There will most likely be a time when they cut us off in that sense, to where we won't have that virtual kind of connection. So those days will be coming eventually, but the censorship's horrible. I think this is all part of it. It's it's the test. These are trials, but I think we just have to do the best we can with what we have. I really have no other way to think about it, honestly. It's a very difficult, and it's a struggle. We'll put it that way.
Well, here's something you and I talk about. I'll go to Casey next, but here's something you and I've talked about just on the phone. But what do you think Trump's role is in all this? Where do you think that's going with Trump? What do you think the plan is? What's your feelings on that?
Oh yeah, it's conflicting because I just know in general politics are pretty much pony shows. It's all theater. I understand that, but then at the same time, I understand the Most High God is actually allowing all of these things to happen, and ultimately controlling the play out of everything. So if he's allowing all of these things to happen, they're meant to. But as far as his specific role, I mean, there is the position where people claim that, oh, he's chosen, he's going to save the world, and then there's the opposite where he's the Antichrist. I don't really fall into either of those camps. I just believe he is being used to bring forth something, and I don't know the details, and I'm not going to claim to know the details, honestly.
No, that's fair enough. Casey, what are your thoughts on Trump altogether? Like, what are your feelings? Because there's people that believe he's totally in on it. That he's a part of the thing. There's people that think he's not. That maybe that there's the whole Cyrus weird connection there. I mean, what are your thoughts on Trump?
Yeah, I believe that I don't think he's any different than Obama, to be honest with you. And a lot of people, it's going to make a lot of people really mad, but we've done so much to expose even the occult symbology that's inside of the construction of Trump Tower and the year it came out, and the 58 rooms at Mar-a-Lago and the 58 stories at Trump Tower. And
Well,
the
here's my question, not to play devil's advocate, but just to throw this out there. And I've seen all that, and I agree with you. He even has Apollo symbolism in one of his hotels, so I know that's associated. Does that mean, immediately that he knows what's going on? He's a part of it. Does that mean that that's a spiritual sign that he doesn't really fully understand maybe the occult and esoteric sides of this, but spiritually it's showing us that he will be used? He's a part of this. He's so important to all this. I believe that he's a really important part of everything that's happening right now. And I used to think that Obama might be the last president, and then there was the election, and at the time I thought Hillary was probably going to get elected. That's why I made no videos on that, no predictions, but I definitely didn't see Trump, and that happened. It's a whole new thing. It seems a whole new kind of ball game.
I think that people say he's being used by God, to find out which side of the fence you're on. Are you
right? Okay, there we
lie?
go. There we go. Okay, keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah. Are you going to believe the lie? Is your heart hardened? What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose either side is bad, and we've all known that before the Trump presidency. We all knew that. And all of a sudden we put our brains on the shelf and we forgot. I was a strong Republican for decades of my life. I voted for Bush when I was in pharmaceutical sales. I believed in the right left paradigm, but once you're awakened, you let that go. Everything that we've experienced since the Trump presidency has been smoke and mirrors. The deep state, Q, it's like, I just think it's all lies. And look, here we are at the end of the presidency and people still waiting on these sealed indictments. And then what's going to happen? He'll hand the football off to the Democrats, and then he'll just say, oh, I couldn't get it done because I was opposed and because we had CV-19.
But here's my thing though is, and I wonder, will it be that easy? Because the Democrat Party in America now has completely, I feel that's part of everything being exposed. They're fully, and the Republicans have been exposed to being do-nothings. They're cowards, and I feel a part of that is probably because so many of them are Masonic, and they have things on each other, or the other side has things on them. That's just my feeling. But the left has been totally exposed as full-on Marxist now in America. Like, I don't know who can call themselves a Democrat in America and believe in Jesus. I mean, that's the point I'm at. What do you think about
Democrats are just as bad. They're worse, but it's part of the right-left paradigm. Look, what is the incentive for the right and left to work together? To maintain power. It's no different than the WWF Wrestling Federation. They all get together.
Come on now. I worked for them. No,
yeah,
but behind the scenes, they're all having parties together and getting drunk and having dinner, and they go over each other's house and their family. But then when they're in the ring, you could swear that they actually hate each other. Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Politics is no different, and they keep getting richer and richer and richer. Billionaires have gained so much wealth over the past 4 years
Very
while
true.
we've been decimated.
Well,
It's
what do we
all
think? I'm sorry, Casey, but what do we think the end game is then? Because my feeling is just looking at everything the way I do every week and doing videos and doing shows and just watching news every day. I seriously am beginning to lean more towards the idea that all of this is a setup for Obama to come back on the scene, especially with the connection with Black Lives Matter and now reparations. And, as we're even Days was talking about earlier, I mean, they're using this, of course, which sucks because there are real issues with racism in America, but now they're going way extreme with things. But it seems like a perfect setup, and all the liberals, if you will, in America, or the Marxists bending a knee. It seems like it's a perfect setup for Obama to come back in. Like, yes, we need our black president back, and yes, Obama, I'll bend a knee. And I mean, guys, am I just going off on a tangent? What do you
No,
think here?
you're really onto something there, and I agree with that sentiment. Not to say that I know that's what's going to happen, but I could see the angle there, especially when we're talking about the left-right paradigm. I mean, we could simply look at foreign policy. We could look at the geopolitics. We could look at the CFR. We could look at Bilderberg, and what we'll see there is that there will be just as many Democrats as there will be Republicans. So ultimately, at the top, it's very clear that this is all just one single bird. So I think that's pretty easy to figure out. But also, what's most important is looking at the globalist goals. Fourth Industrial Revolution, for instance, or Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, reforestation, biodiversity, ending the digital divide. All of these different plans are all joint plans with the left and the right, not just American politics, but also foreign politics. We could see SoftBank is actually running and owns Boston Dynamics, which is now running RoboCops all over the earth. And we also see that China owns pretty much a large majority of not only our media, but even our infrastructure, as well as India. So what we find here is that the entire globe is all working together to bring in this new biotech technocracy. So I think that's actually the goal. And what we see now politically has to do with changing culture. I mean, more so, it's twofold. Onefold, it's detaching people from God by creating narcissists and egoists through the flesh, through the focus of culture, the love.
They did that well.
Yes,
Oh, they did a good job of that one.
They
Oh,
sure
so
did.
sad.
They're so successful right now. I mean, it's really horrible. And what I see with the race angle, not that there isn't real racial issues that need to be addressed, because of course there are. They've always been there and they've never properly been addressed, but they're being co-opted in a sense and utilized to create this type of worship of man, this uprising of the natural man, natural law. What we see is this exaggerated Rousseau kind of culture where man is the noble savage and humans are essentially and inherently good, and we need to have freedom and endless liberation, which is actually just liberating yourself from morality and responsibility and accountability. But that's another topic. So what we find here is, in fact, that's not the case at all. We're really going towards a dystopia while they're selling utopia. And the race angle is really a way not just to divide, but it's somewhat of a golden calf, right? We're sort of seeing this new structuring of worship through race, and it's unfortunate because there are some real things here, and it's actually playing out into their hands. And I think ultimately this is just a way to break down society and turn us into slaves, basically, as you guys have been demonstrating.
Good point. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, I just am so, sometimes I feel like there's nothing I can do. I hear everybody talking and I see everything that's going on, and it's just heartbreaking. And I'm so grateful that I don't have to be the one to solve it on my own. I think that, there's going to have to be some intervention. What's interesting is that they just had a
Jacob, let me throw this out real quick, and I'll just say, it just popped in my head, but it's a very dirty business for real, like what we do. We all have our own ways of doing it. And you're really good, at focusing more on the love of everything. And then there's Days, he's got his way, and there's Casey, and then my way with the scariest movie ever. I've always taken that heavier, darker kind of approach because, we're fishers of men. And
right.
And that's how we have to bring some of these people in. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to show them the ugly, the gross, the dark, the scary, to shake their ass awake. That's been my approach. But everyone's got their own, and that's again why I love all you guys, because you all have your own individual approach, and we all have our ways of getting the message out. And go ahead.
And the media, it's just it's nonstop. It's nonstop. I mean, they showed the most awful thing to everybody, and that it gets into people, and then they show more awful things, and it gets into people, and they know what they're doing, and it's everywhere. And so the question is, what do we do about it? So a lot of people, when I was talking about obviously following the rules, right? That's a big no. Okay. It's a big deal breaker. You say to wear a mask to make somebody feel better, and that makes you a shill. I'm by the way, I'm Jewish either.
It's good to let some people freak out or whatever for whatever reason on that stuff.
No, because let me tell you why. Because of people like us that talk. And we say things with such faith, and we say that this is the way it has to be. And then we declare it all in Christ's name. And yet, a lot of people today would, if somebody punched them in the face, probably punch them back. I probably would, right? But I'm not like Christ. And Christ would say to offer the other cheek, because you don't win a war completely ever by killing more. You can't, because there's always going to be war. It's only won by the love of God. It only is. And so the day that we're in right now, what I've been saying to everybody on the channel is really focus on that. Really focus on your faith. Really go to God and really look at yourself and say, am I doing, you call me Lord, Jesus said, you call me Lord, but do you do as I say? Do you do as I say? And because that was the big problem, right? That was the big problem. And I don't think today a lot of people really want to do what Christ is saying. I think a lot of people right now want to do what they're doing. They're going to go, did you hear this? They're going to go in. There was a big blast that was sent out to everybody in that area, the Chaz. And they said, just so you know, you have this amount of time to vacate, because we have just a coalition of Christians and truckers and bikers and everything else are going to come in, and we're armed, and we're going to give that place back to, and it's like, where's the government supposed to be, right? Isn't this what Jade Helm was about? They're waiting. I get it. But am I supposed to tell everybody that to get everybody scared so that everybody acts scared so they can do it? Or are we supposed to get to the love of God and share it? So I feel, KJ, I feel like, and Days, I feel like handicap. And so, forgive me if I just keep hammering on, just please, Lord, help us. But that's where I'm at today.
No, man. I mean, I see all of us, even all four of us here, as we're all different branches of the same tree, and we don't need to do things the exact same way as the others, because we have our appeal to people. We can reach the masses in our own ways, and that's a good thing. So yeah, there's never not that you were, but there's never an apology for our approach, the way we take things, and different people will learn from different teachers. And I've learned from a handful, if not more, over the years myself. Most of them, unfortunately, are gone or removed from YouTube now, but that's the way it is. But yeah, no, I understand that. I'm with you on that. And Days, Casey, you guys want to jump in on anything here, anything else as far as like what's happening right here, your feelings on what's happening in the world, the escalation of things? How do we approach this? Go ahead.
Real quick, just to chime in on what you said, I think it also comes down to audience, right? There's many different types of audience, and it depends on who you're talking to, not necessarily who you're attempting to reach, because you never know who you're actually reaching. So I think that's
True.
one part. That's one part that plays in. I could say for myself, when I was in the world, if someone would have came at me with scripture, I would have laughed at them, and I would have given them no ear at all. So I do understand that certain techniques are needed to reach certain individuals out there in the world, especially those that really need the truth. And sometimes, I personally believe that God utilizes his watchmen and his bringers of truth in different ways, So I think that is something to consider there. We're definitely not all going to be the same, but ultimately the goal is the same goal, which is the most important part, I guess.
Yeah, man.
And
Casey?
I feel like there is a huge disparity between mainstream Christianity and true Christianity. mainstream Christianity does not follow what the Bible tells them to do. They follow what their pastor tells them to do, who is ruled by 501c3 and is ultimately in the back pocket of the government. This is why they don't talk about political issues. And I know Trump tried to loosen up some of the limitations on that. But in effect, if you look at what he actually did, it really didn't change anything. And we need to be careful about that as Christians. You know, in the Old Testament, there's a story about the ancient Hebrew Israelites, and they begged the Most High for a king on earth. And God tried to talk them out of it. And he finally gave in. He gave them their king on earth. And guess what he told them? He goes, along with that, your sons and daughters will go to war, will be sacrificed to this king. You will pay this king. You will do all these things for this king. We're not meant to have a kings on earth.
No.
We're meant to, our king is supposed to be the Most High. There's not supposed to be a middleman, because everything they do is through the lens of the physical flesh body, which is imperfect. And none of these leaders, none of them truly love Jesus. They pretend, they'll placate, they'll throw out. Obama did the same thing. He had his Lincoln Bible, you know, and then, oh, the Christians go, oh, look, he believes in God. No, he doesn't.
Well, that's another one of those weird connections between Obama and Trump, where I feel again Trump is in his role. Now, how aware he is, I'm not sure sometimes, but he is playing his role. And Obama, when they created the One World Tower, which was the unification of the twins, and there's a whole thing on that. You've done it, Casey. I've covered it. I don't know if you guys have, Jacob or Days, but there's a lot of symbolism in the One World Tower that they created. And Obama signed the beam, you know, the WWW, we something, we something, we something. But that was on Trump's birthday that he signed that. So, and that's many years ago. So there's always been a kind of connection there. And as I said earlier, I'm going to revisit this week. I'm going to look back on the Trump Economist cover. I remember there was a little, but then there's iPet Go 2. We're going to recover that look up that as well. But even in there was the girl fighting against the tanks, right? Like the rise up of the, I don't know, but I need to go back and look at all of it because it's all happening really quick. You know, obviously we see this, or do we? I mean, here's the other question: do you guys think that this is all just going to peter out? Trump will get his next term, and then kind of maybe we'll see some justice in this world. What do you think, Jacob? I'll go to you first, and I'll hit to the other guys next. Go ahead.
I'd like to think that we could see some justice in the world. It's hard to see that today, you know, especially, you know, working the amount of hours that you're working and not working the amount of hours you used to work. It's hard. And I think that, I mean, you know, I think it's going to be a lot worse. I hate to say that. I do think that this system has to completely crumble. I mean, but I think at the end of this, you know, maybe 3.5 years or so, I think that there's a possibility for a much better day. I mean, look, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, you know, there's going to be some kind of a big world order, right? I mean, they're doing everything they can to make America tear itself apart. So it's not the, you know, the last standing whatever in this world order, but we're already part of it. You know, Casey,
Yeah.
666, right? We're already there, right? It's the One World Tower, right? Come on.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Jacob. And guys, I'll ask you next. And what we'll do after that is we've gone an hour and a half now. So what we'll do after that, if you guys are cool with that, we'll ask for questions from the audience, and I'll let you guys answer everything. I want to sit back and see your thoughts on that. Are y'all cool with that idea?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's move on next. We'll go to Days next, then Casey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely see where you guys are going with that. Of course, there is this hope for some justice, some possible peace or a potential for peace in the future. And I think I kind of side with this position Jacob is taking on, that, you know what, this whole thing just has to come down. I think it's biblical, scriptural, and I think it's ultimately going to bring in judgment. It's going to bring in the all things we've read about in Revelation. But how is it going to roll out? You know, how long are things going to take? That's the part we don't know. Time and hour, we're not aware of any of these things. But I do know, well, this is what they say. This is what they've written regarding society, regarding technology, mainly the technocracy. That is coming. There's forecasts that by 2025, 50% of the labor force will be removed due to automation. So just that alone shows that society is going to be much different in a very short time. In fact, between now and 2030, we're going to see just huge changes socially and economically. So just the world is going to be different. Culture is going to be different. And society as a whole is going to be much different. The question is, are you going to be different? And I think that's what's most important, mainly discussing spiritual things. Are you going to be different? It doesn't matter what happens to this world, because it's happening and it will. But we really need to not only know what's coming and be aware of it, but mainly be focusing on where are you going to be in all of this?
Good point. Thanks, man. And Casey, go ahead.
I feel there will be no justice until the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the realm of duality that we're all locked in, the right-left paradigm, until that is destroyed once and for all and Jesus' kingdom comes. Because basically we're all just deceived. We're believing a man and or men on either side of the aisle that they're going to help solve our problems and bring us justice.
Right.
And many people don't know this, but the day after Trump's name was named in a newly released flight log on the Express, the day after is when Eggstein disappeared. The day after. You could look all this up for yourself. Absolutely. And so there's a reason why that got fumbled. There's a reason why nobody that was attached to that ring has been brought to justice, and I don't believe they ever will be. This was the most significant case probably in the history of United States government, all the people attached to Eggstein, and none of them have been brought to justice. And the star witness was fumbled and disappeared, whatever you believe happened to him. And there's a reason. And I believe because this went all the way to the top, and now they've given us these distractions and nothing will ever get done.
Man, that's great. Thanks, guys. And all right, man. So, hey, we're going to go and shift it up a little bit. This is always fun as well. Gone over an hour and a half, so I figured this is a good time to do it now. We'll ask the audience for any questions. If you guys have any questions, just start your comment off with the word question. And then after that, ask us what you want to ask us. And I'm going to go right down the list, give each one of the guys a few minutes to give their perspective on it. Maybe you have something specific for somebody. But let's go ahead and see it. Whenever you guys are ready, it'll take a few minutes, guys, for them to catch up with us. But once you guys are ready, just type in question and anything you want to ask, anything. You've got a chance now to talk to Casey, Jacob, and Days of Noah, man. So anything you want to ask, please throw it out there. And this is always fun. It's always good to give you guys a chance to throw out your questions and see what the boys think. And guys, thanks once again for being here, man. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted. Just a hangout, talk about some of the things happening today and get some different perspectives. All right, here we go. Here's one right here. Okay. Question. Let's see if I'm trying to figure out how I can put that up on the screen. Give me a second. I'll figure it out. 1 second, guys. I want to put it up on the screen for you. Here we go. First question from Truth Over Trends. Is QAnon a false group? I'll go to Jacob first, then Days, then Casey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to express my ignorance. I mean, I don't know much about Q. I've seen many posts, and I know a lot of people really. I will say that I find it sometimes a little bit. I'm uncomfortable with people hiding behind like symbols and not being who they are, and always it seems like they're worshiping everything that he's saying as if it's true, but yet I mean you could take things and you can twist things a certain way, but once again I don't know. I don't want to judge. I mean, my heart says, no, I'm not going to follow that. That's what my heart says. But then on the flip side of the coin, sometimes I see him, post, I guess, the scripture or something. But I can't speak to that because, I mean, I don't know the man's heart or the men's heart. But I do find it suspect because I don't see a lot of love coming out of it. So I always kind of judge the tree by the fruit. I see a lot of outrage and so I'm not going to actually follow after him, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, I definitely could always be wrong.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, exactly. I'm with that. I don't follow it myself because I just the same thing. I don't trust shadowy groups that give me truth to amass millions of people. Days, go ahead.
I don't know a whole lot of details, but honestly, I personally believe it's a LARP. I just think any type of situation like this that has such a huge following, especially when you see the makeup of its following, it clearly appears to be a type of operation. And, not to say you can't gain some truths from this group, but
Yeah.
I just don't see how something like this, were it authentic, uh, being allowed.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't buy into it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Casey, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to know the truth about Q, go to JFK's gravesite, which is shaped like a Q. He died the day that Trump, or not the day, but when Trump was 17 years old, and Q alphanumerically is the number 17. We've come full circle. And if you line up that Q at JFK's website, it points 66 degrees to Trump Tower, which is 66 floors high where Trump's penthouse is. So all of this was planned long in advance. Q stands for Quetzalcoatl, the crowned and
Yes.
feathered serpent. That's what it is. The
Maybe
deep
that's
state-
why we're seeing all the flying serpents. That's
And
my
once
thing.
again, there you go. The Ouroboros, Quetzalcoatl. It's the whole thing. It's so very cool, man. That's why I know I'm happy that I got to meet your other friends. Now I know why they're your friends.
Oh yeah, you guys are all fantastic, man. Thank you, Casey. That's good stuff, man. All right, I'm going to jump to the next, fellas. We'll go same line. And again, thanks for doing this. I love this. I think it's good for the people, man, to get different perspectives and people I personally trust. And these are fun for us, man. So, question: may we use deadly force to repel deadly force and protect our home, food, and families? And this is if the stuff really goes crazy. Go ahead, Jacob, or when it does.
I'll just answer to what I would do. I don't know what I would do in the situation, but yes, if someone came in and my family was threatened, I would use deadly force, and I wouldn't think twice about it. I'd probably feel some remorse that I'd taken the life of somebody and not been able to reach them and help them ahead of time, but I wouldn't feel like I had somehow sinned. Now, that being said, it's a very, very different scenario than what Jesus was talking about. Those who live by the sword will die by it. He's being very clear. So if that guy comes in with a sword to kill me and my family, I may just take that sword and kill him. It doesn't mean that I was permitted to go and kill somebody. It just means that I was part of God's plan for that. But you don't go looking for trouble. You don't go trying to be violent. If you can avoid having to use deadly force, of course, you're not supposed to kill. If somebody smacks you, you give him the other cheek, and he says somebody steals from you, you give him also your coat. He's not telling people, yeah, it's okay, go kill people. He's not saying that, right? And it just makes sense. But on the flip side of the coin, yes, you protect your family. I mean, it's very important to protect your family. But once again, if God's in charge of everything, whatever's going to happen, God has his hand on. So, I don't worry too much about people coming in and doing things to my family.
No, that's a good point.
But I will say, they don't want to come into my house.
Right. Yeah, I'm the same way. Thank you for that, man. Days, go ahead.
Yeah, that was actually very well put, and I agree 100%. There's no question, right? And I also second that sentiment. You don't want what's over here.
Yeah, good. I agree. And that'll be the problem is that if this stuff continues with these autonomous zones and all these other things and more of the nihilism being raised up around America, they're going to wake up a sleeping giant, which isn't going to be good. We don't want violence, but it's going to get to a point where good people are going to get tired of this stuff that have guns. And then it's going to be, what's interesting, it really is playing out into Albert Pike's 3 World Wars scenario. And we really are in that third World War, pre-war situation where they're turning the nihilists and the atheists off on the Christians. That's why I'm looking for the trend to change now towards Christianity, that these people hate not just capitalism or America, more Christianity. And we'll see how that one right there plays out. But that's what I've been kind of watching as far as trends. Casey, go ahead, man. What do you think about all that?
Oh, I believe that non-deadly force, the technology for that, has been intentionally stifled and removed from the police departments all across the nation, and they've done that on purpose so that that officers are faced with a decision that they either have to kill someone or not. And the tools that they are given, they're just ineffective. I mean, you saw the guy that got tased and he just pulled the tasers out like it didn't even affect. They had to tase him like 3 times, and then the other guy turned around and pulled the guy's taser out of his holster and then tried to shoot the cop with it, and then they shot him. So I would defer to Christ's example. That's the way I always try to live my life. I'm not perfect, but when the soldier cut off the ear, when he cut off the ear of the soldier, Christ healed him, and he said, "If you live by the sword, you die by the sword." The sword is the word. That's what the sword meant. Jesus wasn't telling us, to go buy a sword to kill people. He was talking about the word and using your mouth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sword.
Thank you, Casey.
Can I
Go ahead, Jacob.
Because it was something that I really wanted to. Casey, that was just so great, man. I mean, the word itself, sword. You take the S off of the end, you put it on. I mean, Christ, when he comes again, erchome, that tongue that he has is a double-edged sword. You always have this picture of how your tongue is like a sword, and so that also goes for the spiritual world too, not just literally physically killing them, because we know that words have a lot of power. I know the old sticks and stones break my bones thing, but they do. I mean, I for many years carried the pain of being abused, both physically and emotionally, was what hurt the most. But if you live by that as well, if you, by your words, cut off someone's hearing to the word of God, Christ has to come in and restore that. This is not, we're not supposed to say anything that condemns another person. We're not supposed to say, unless of course it's a godly correction. We're not supposed to slander anyone. We're not supposed to say things about other people and call them this or call them that unless we know, and it's just so funny today how people are just so far removed from this. They don't even realize they're living by the sword. And that's why they're dying by it on a regular basis with the words they have to endure themselves.
Thanks, Jacob. And on that note, I'll ask you the next question. We'll move on down after that. What are your thoughts on 5G technologies?
Once again, it's these. There are other people that have. I can't even start to research this. It's just it isn't in my wheelhouse. Obviously, it scares me a little bit because I don't understand it, and I'm sure that if it comes to my neighborhood, I will start to research it a little more. I know that this is a very, very big deal to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I do know that some of the things that people were saying about, the virus, the crown being connected, all that, some things didn't line up to me, like the countries that had it, that supposedly, they didn't have the 5G.
Right.
So I don't understand all that, but I don't get it. I think that they're, in my honest opinion, I feel like they're probably, they don't care really about our health. I don't think a lot
of course.
of stuff,
of course they don't. Yeah. They're poisoning us and killing us. Absolutely. Sure.
So, I mean, I maybe something will stand in the way of that too.
Yeah.
Kay. You know what I mean?
That's fair enough. Days, what do you think about 5G?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Will something stand in the way of 5G? That's always possible, and that's of course by God's will.
Amen.
And we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. But just in general, 5G technology is really just 5th generation technology. It's just a generation of a type of technology. There will be 6G and 7G eventually, right? So it's really just 5th generation technology, which is interesting because this is allegedly the fifth age or whatever.
Yeah.
So I find that kind of interesting how the 5th age has 5G technology. It fits well, but overall 5G is really just an energy source and a type of networking technology that's pretty much going to be running the initial networks for this new age, this new 4th industrial revolution of basically the global economy, which is really pretty much what the 5G will be running. Now, as far as its health risks, those are probably vast, and I do believe that there is evidence for this. I'm not very well versed in those, but what I will say is just in general, I mean, health is pretty much ignored just in general in life today. I think corn syrup and things like different forms of sugar and different eating habits, I think are more dangerous than things like 5G. And it's interesting how we're so concerned with the health issues of 5G, yet we're poisoning ourselves on a daily basis, not just with food, but also with media.
Yeah.
So I think
So true.
if we're really going to address health, we need to accurately address it instead of just
Mm.
jumping on one aspect of detriment.
Yeah.
Yes, 5G is a big deal, but it's really just the fifth generation of a type of technology. So I think it's become more of a type of specter. It's and created a bunch of hoopla, but really it's just one part of something that's huge and that will continue to develop. And I'm not trying to play it down or anything, but even something like nanotechnology, I think, is a little more
All
alarming.
right. That's true.
Because this is metamaterials. These are smart materials, basically, which possess properties that do not occur naturally. And actually, they're lighter, they're more mobile, they're smarter, and they can self-replicate actually, and reassemble themselves and assemble themselves on their own. So there's a lot of technologies that far surpass what 5G can do.
Mm.
So I think if we're really going to be concerned about technologies, just like health, we need to consider all of the type of technologies that they're actually rolling out. But great question.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. No, good point. And this is actually a good time to go to Casey because Casey found a connection to 5G I hadn't seen anyone else make, and that's to the microchip technology. But Casey, anything on 5G? Go ahead.
Yeah, 5G is 5-7. Okay. And on 57th Street is Trump Tower. If you look at Trump Tower from the air, it looks like cell phone bars, cell phone signal bars. He was the president under the quarantine while we were all locked in our homes that passed an executive order for 5G and beyond to basically open up the floodgates of 5G technology, 6G, and 7G. And what I believe that 5G is a replacement for the Holy Spirit that dwells in us. And I don't know if it's a spiritual or a mechanical thing, maybe the flooding of information, of lies into our subconscious mind to finally talk us out of the Holy Spirit dwelling and residing in our temple. Because if you think about it, the baptism within the Holy Spirit that Jesus experienced before he went into the wilderness is a very close example to the airwaves and what they're going to send these millimeter waves into our subconscious. One more thing on that, and that's when Noah was in the flood for 40 days and nights. If you think of the ark, it almost appears as the huge with ribs of a boat, and it was baptized in the flood for 40 days and nights. Well, Noah sent out a dove and he sent out a raven. The dove did not return until Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River. The dove returned at that point, and then he went into his 40-day journey into the wilderness. So the Bible is amazing. These are two separate authors separated by 1,000 years of writing, but yet you see these amazing synchronicities occurring in the Bible.
Man, that's awesome. Thanks, Casey. Yeah, that's good stuff. Before I posted this question, somebody else had asked. They didn't post question before it. They just were saying, KJ, is it time to start creating our own communities outside of this? I don't think we're exactly there yet, but I think it's a good time to start prepping just in case. Make sure you get some food preps, perhaps some weapons just in case. Not trying to spread fear here, but I'm doing this in my own life. I've got my own kind of backup plan just in case things go crazy. We don't want that to happen, obviously, but it's good. It's a good idea to start kind of getting in that mindset, okay? Because again, we all want to think everything's going to be happy and going to end up nice and everyone's going to be friends and loving each other. But the Bible tells us something different. Destruction draws nigh.
Scary.
So here's the next question. I'll jump to you, Jacob. Do you think they'll try to pull off Project Bluebeam, the alien deception? And then it says, KJ, your iPad video, you said the Antichrist may very well look like what we've been told Jesus looks like. And I did. And I do wonder about that. Now, I see the Obama thing as a very strong possibility. I've also questioned if there could be an alien agenda, and the alien I'm talking about is Maitreya, which is a well-known figure, and I've covered that for many years. So yeah, but Jacob, for you though, what do you think about the Project Bluebeam or the whole alien side of all this stuff that's going on?
Being in this world that we're in, there is so much to be scared of. There is so much to worry about. There's so much. We talked about nanotechnology. First thing that came to my mind was like, oh, chemtrails. You know, it's like, right. It's like maybe we already have it in us. All of these things that we're being told on a regular basis, they're scary. These are scary things. So we don't know what to believe. All right. So are UFOs real? I don't know. Some people say they're fallen angels, that they're not aliens at all. That's why on the show, if I talk about a UFO, I don't, angel technology, it doesn't matter to me. It's just different than I'm used to. Right. So could it be fake? Could it be real? I don't know.
Well, I just
be.
showed in my last video that they had this. She was a Russian scientist that talked at the UN. I immediately, when I was looking for that, I found videos trying to debunk it where they were hiding her face. They were like blurring it out and then trying to put other words over it. But that's what they do, guys. I mean, every time I do a paranormal supernatural video, tons of people, no, it's already been explained. It's like, no, dude, you're falling for the bait.
Right.
Of course, they don't want you to think that, oh, wow, there's something spiritual happening in the skies above you. But it absolutely is. And the lady at the UN was talking about a recent UFO encounter, which was encountered. 3 different people recorded this, but it looked like a massive pyramid floating above the Pentagon, right? So that looked to me like that could be a hologram. Maybe it's a real spiritual dimension thing, but it could be a hologram. But I don't know.
So here's the thing with this is that, we talked about CERN a while back. CERN was trying to open up black holes. They were, storing antimatter, and they were trying to open up. I mean, this is what they said. We're trying to open up a dimension and we don't know what could come out. You had the people that created the D-Wave computer doing talks about a tsunami of demons. So we know that we're in a spiritual world. They understand that. The whole world is Egypt. We already understand that too. That's why you don't have to go very far to see all of this played out. People dress as Pharaoh, people dress as this god or this goddess, right? All the asteroids name certain things, the Osiris Rex mission, right? All of this, we're in the midst of something. Are they aliens? I would say it's more of a spiritual war. Whether or not that it's, literal or a hologram, doesn't matter. It's real. You know what I'm saying? So there is an alien spiritually that is already invaded. And here's the interesting thing. CERN, which by the way was, I don't know if anybody knows this, their logo is a 666, and they're actually located on the temple for Apollyon, the destroyer. So that's the one that opens the Great Pit, right? All of a sudden, and in that Gothard tunnel, there was a CERN connection. When they were at the outside, they put the collider on the screen right before time moved backwards. So they're doing some spooky stuff. We get that, right? But we're here too. We're here too. So while they're trying to become immortal beings and they're trying to stay in this carnal realm and, in this world of the devil and Lucifer and all of the carnal atoms of the world, which is what it is, the first atom, they're trying to make that a thing forever. It's not going to go on forever. There's going to be an end to it. So I'm waiting. I'll be honest. I'm waiting for something like that. Whether it's real or not, I'm waiting to see it. It's like, oh yeah, okay, it's Tuesday, right? That's what I'll say.
So, thank you, Jacob. Days, what do you think about the alien? Is it deception or possible reality?
Yeah, that was really interesting right there, and I really identify with much of that, actually, because you think, man, in all reality, we're really just playing in their game. We're just kind of present within their system of fantasy, their science fiction fantasy of transhumanism. We're just playing a role, this type of non-player character role in this, as far as earthly humans are concerned. I'm not considering us as children of God or spiritual beings, but we are kind of just waiting all of this out, right? So that's the part that's most frustrating, is we're kind of subject to their plans and subject on this earth, at least, to their whims, and it's pretty interesting. But as far as the blue beam, that's another thing I'm torn on. I think CERN, I look at it 2 ways. The CERN thing is, let's just say these, and I personally believe aliens are types of fallen angels, are types of demonic entities. That's just my personal perspective. I don't claim to be absolutely correct on that, because I don't think anyone really knows. But as far as the CERN thing, I think if something real is going to happen, I could easily see CERN being that conduit, that kind of breaks into another dimension. They actually accomplish what they were trying to do, and they actually do break into some dimension and bring in some type of thing that we're gonna
hole, right? They opened the
yes.
black hole. The thing exploded after 1,000 years. I'm not saying they did, but they could have.
Yes.
Yeah.
If something real is going to take place in that sense, I could see it very easily happening through CERN. But then I have this other kind of perspective where I look at blue beam, and maybe not just blue beam, or just some type of projected psyop is going to happen where they pretend to bring in aliens or something. They put on this big massive psyop to kind of fool the world, similar to Reagan's "if we just had one shared threat," this idea, just
Right.
bringing the world together to really move humanity in a way that will direct us exactly where they want us to go. I look at it in these two ways. I don't know, I couldn't tell you which one's correct, but that's just my perspective.
No, that's a good one. I appreciate that, Days. Casey, what do you think about all of the alien stuff, the agenda over there?
Yeah, specifically Blue Beam. We made a pretty amazing discovery a couple years ago, and we had found what is called tactile holographic technology, where you can actually touch and move around this hologram floating out in 3D space. And what's required of that is what's called a ruled diffraction grating. And if you look at what a ruled diffraction grating looks like, it almost matches exactly the facade of two famous buildings that once stood in Lower Manhattan. And a lot of people complained about those buildings. They're like, wow, what a weird design. And I'm getting this weird vibratory effect when I look at this building from certain angles. Well, with diffraction gratings, they have to be coated in aluminum. And that's exactly what those buildings were coated in. And when you shine a very powerful laser, that laser then reflects off of the facade and can create 3D holograms that are tactile. In other words, you can feel them. And that might have explained why people were feeling intense heat. Now, where would that laser have come from? Well, Brookhaven Laboratories, just a few miles away, had one such laser, all going back all the way to the 70s. So I believe that was the beta test for this blue beam, and that there will be more advanced images that they're going to shine in the sky. And I think this false messiah that returns will probably be something you can touch, feel, and see.
And that's interesting. That definitely makes me wonder. But yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Casey. All right, guys, I'll continue. We'll do one more. It's been 2 hours. I don't want to keep y'all too long, but I thought that'd be fun. Let's do one more, and then we'll say our goodbyes. You guys can chat a little bit about whatever you want to before we go. So, last question here for everybody. Cat's Meow says, if they come to give forced vaccines, is it okay to use deadly force to protect your body? Jacob?
I mean, like what? Like come to your house and like
because they're already really talking about these things. So it's a possibility.
I think actually, now I'm not. I just want to make this very clear because I know how sensitive people are. You got to walk very carefully. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump hater. Okay, but I do believe that he made it so that it can't be mandatory. I think that was just something that was just passed. That's one. Secondly, I don't believe it's going to come to that at all. And thirdly, it's not even. I don't think it's a real thing.
That's fair.
I really don't think it's a real thing. I think we have other things that we should really be concerned with. And
okay,
but
thanks.
Yeah, but I do believe, because I'd like people to not everybody's really worried about a lot of stuff. And
well, it's beyond. Yeah, we shouldn't. I mean, it's good that we can look at all this stuff and the scariest things ever. And I've been doing it for years, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the Bible tells us exactly 365 times not to live in fear, not to be in fear. Yeah, right. So that's an important message to get out there. It doesn't mean we shouldn't show people the bad, scary stuff. We have to, because so many people are just brain dead to it. I mean, again, every time I go to a dinner with friends or something, I can never fully be myself because I want to talk about everything, but I just don't want to do it. And I can sense it in the people around me that most of them just aren't ready for it or they don't care. You know what I mean? So yeah, we have to. It's a very delicate balance. But thanks, Jacob.
Just point one thing out too, because this is really something that's interesting, and I think this will really get people thinking. how many questions have we taken? This fourth question?
Yes,
Is it the
sir.
fourth? Okay, so 2 questions that we were asked were in direct relation to using deadly force. Now think about that for a second. This is what's on people's minds. And see, that's where the love of God has to come in and let people know. If you remind them of Psalms 91, you know what I mean? The Lord is my refuge. Though 1,000 will die at your side, 10,000 will die at your feet, you're okay. It's going to be all right. A lot of this stuff is just stuff that you're scared of because you've been told to be scared. It's a lie. The dragon lies. He's the father of all lies. There's no truth in him. There's never been any truth in him. So let's not worry about that. Let's speak life. Let's call those things that are not as if they are. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So no, it's not going to happen. I'm going to say it's not going to happen. And if it does, well, then you'd want to ask me, but you wouldn't want to do it at my house.
No, that's okay, man, and that's good. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate that. I feel you on that. Go ahead, Days. What do you think about that?
Well, first off, biological autonomy is very important. I think it's parallel to protecting and preserving the temple. But overall, just through my studies, I've come to the conclusion that vaccines will never be forced, and I don't believe they will ever be mandatory for several reasons. But one mainly being that the majority, or at least the percentage that they want to take the vaccines, will willingly take the vaccines. And I don't think they will have to mandate them just due to the fact that a great majority of people will be begging for them. And overall, I think if people are going to consider vaccines to have any tie to the mark of the beast or any type of tracking system, I I try not to go into that just because I think it's just something I'm ignorant to as far as knowing exactly what it is. So I don't really go there too often. But I do know, well, if it is going to be a part of the mark of the beast, we have a choice there, right? I think it's scriptural that we will choose, we will make the decision. It won't be forced upon us. So I wouldn't really worry about that too much. That's just my view. I could be wrong, but that's just how I see it.
No, that's good. I appreciate that, man. And Casey, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I believe that what'll happen is they're going to make it look like it's going to be mandatory. They're going to use the case precedent from 1905 from some case of a guy who refused the smallpox vaccine and he got fined and pinned down and forced to take it. They're going to try to use that. And then we heard Dershowitz shooting his mouth off saying, oh, we can pin you down and make you take this. But in the end, I think that what they're going to do is just make it really difficult, people's lives very difficult who don't take it. So you're not going to be able to travel freely. And just like Days and Noah said, basically, it's going to get to the point where a lot of people are just going to beg for it because they want that convenience. They're basically going to sell out. And this is why we have to take a stand against things like the mask, because that's just the first step. If you start capitulating one by one, then you're just going to lead yourself down a road where when they finally say, okay, take the vaccine, then people are just going to take it.
Yeah, man, I definitely feel you on that. You're right. I mean, the masks and everything else and following the lines, that's all to me, again, not to be a doontard here, folks, but that it's setting us in that mindset of being a slave and following orders. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, but I've been watching this for 14 years, and it's just a part of the programming. Well, guys, on that note, man, we've gone over 2 hours, which I was hoping to get a good couple hours with you guys. I don't want to push y'all any longer because all of y'all are busy in life. I understand this, but I'll just go to each of you. And whatever closing statements, no rush, just whatever you want to talk, whatever you want the people to remember, whatever, man. I'll go to Jacob, I'll go to Days, I'll go to Casey. So, Jacob, go ahead.
I'd just like people to take away from this conversation the fact that there is more, and what YouTube and the internet and Twitter and the media, what they're offering you, it's it's not the only answer. There's more to it, and I really hope that people take a second to not just listen to me and everybody on this show and take what I say and what everybody here says as this is the way it is, and if you don't do it, you're this, and if you do it, you're that. Just ask for more, because you exist, right? So this is what we all share in common. I am the beginning and the end of my life in this world, right? Because I'm that kind of the center of it. And so are you. We share this in common. We have the same energy. We have the same makeup. We are the same. There's one God, there's one Lord, there's one baptism, there's one Spirit in all and through all. A lot of people don't really know the scriptures. A lot of people that are on YouTube and everything else that quote, they really don't know. But they'll say certain things. And then what'll happen is those people that hear those certain things, they'll regurgitate it like it's the truth. Just like you were saying earlier about how they said, give us a king. You know, you were supposed to go to the mountain, Moses, right? He was the only one that went. No one wanted to go know God. They wanted to listen to what Moses said. What did they get? They got the 10 Commandments. What did they end up doing? Worshiping Baal, right? They got that duality. That's what they got in return. They say, give us a king. You know, the judges weren't enough. So here comes Saul. And what did Saul do? Saul didn't care. Saul didn't care. And just like you were saying earlier, we'll take some of your wages that you're going to tithe. You're going to go out. Your women, you're going to go out and you're going to make like bread. You're going to sell it at bake sales. You're going to set up the chairs. You're going to work the church parking lot. We don't need people to teach us. What we need to do is understand that there is a most high God that is everything that exists only exists because of it. It is what quantum theory could call whatever, it's like that one string or string theory. Everything's connected. You could call it whatever you want, but it's not alien to you. It's just that it died, just like Christ died at the place of the skull, Golgotha. The truth of who God wants you to be was put to death in your thinking. Point to your temples. This is where the judgment throne of God is. The kingdom of God is within you. And right now, the truth is starting to set people free. And while that's going to happen, you're going to see madness in the world. You're going to see all this. But I'm telling you, you got to unplug and you got to understand, these are terrible things. No, I don't want to force this. No, I don't agree with, doing that. I'm not down with any of this stuff. But I also understand that this kingdom is the world's kingdom. And we're here to set people free from it because this is not our kingdom. My kingdom is not of this world, Jesus said. Now hear this. This is a great message for people because I want people to understand what he meant. Because a lot of people were like, Jesus is saying, if my kingdom was here, we'd have an army and we'd murder you because you're trying to hurt me. That's not what Jesus was saying. He didn't say that. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. Because if it was of this world, you're darn right I'd slap your face for not doing that or not doing this. You're darn right I'd have you kissing this and kissing that because that's what they do in this world. People would fight you for my name, but I'm not of this world. This world is a world built on lies and hate and fear and pain, and it's coming to an end. It's coming to an end. Get to the kingdom. Get out of this world. Get into the ark, right? Seek the truth. Just ask for it. Don't believe me. Don't believe anybody on the show. Just ask for it. Ask for it. Just ask for it. That's it. That's
thanks.
what I want to talk.
No, please continue. I mean, cut you off. I was just saying thank you, man, for that. But go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it. I mean, that's kind of the main goal of my channel is that I talk about all these kooky things and they're spooky, right? But I try to then share the positive part. Like, for example, this blood rainbow that everybody sent me. And a lot of people were like, it's scary, it's scary, it's scary. It's like you're seeing it through the lens of this world. See it through the lens of Christ. See it through for the truth that it is. That even when the sun sets, the rainbow of God is still there. That's what you're meant to see.
Yeah, man, that's great. Thank you, Jacob. That's fantastic, man.
Thanks for having me, KJ.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Else finish up too, and then I'm gonna
go. We'll do final goodbyes in a moment. Let y'all leave your links as well. I left links underneath the player if anyone's looking for your channels. And Days, go ahead. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share, man? No rush on this.
Yeah, definitely. That was good right there, Jacob. And I agree with all of that. And first, I want to say thanks for having me, KJ.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think now is just a really good time to turn around, to really get yourself together. The globalists may claim that this is time for the Great Reset, but I'd say it's our time for our Great Reset, especially for those of us that might have been slipping away or those of us who might not have come to the truth yet. This is your time. And I think there's no better time than now because we are in a transition right now. We are definitely in this transitory or this, especially with this whole COVID transmission, everything seems to be transient, right? It's interesting how metamorphosis is just such a big deal right now in many ways. And I think the most important way is the spiritual change within each and every one of us. So I think it's a great time to repent, a great time to come back to God, a great time to get right with God, and put all your faith in Christ. At the end of the day, I know a lot of us, we discuss many different things. We address the ways of the world, and we have broad audiences that cover outside of the body or the church. So speaking to those believers specifically, this is definitely our time, and we were built for these times. And I think we need to be more concerned with he who can destroy the body and the soul, opposed to he who can just destroy the body or the flesh. So I think of almost importance, it is repentance and getting right, especially through fasting, prayer, and staying focused on what's most important. And of course, some of these things are going to bother us, some of these things are going to affect us in the real world, but I think as long as we could be grounded in the truth, searching through the scriptures for further understanding, I think we'll be okay through all of it. Actually, I'm sure we will, because scripture tells us so. And outside of that, I just want to say thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Man, you're welcome, and thank you, Days. I'm loving. I have to remember I'm on a live show sometimes, listening to all three of you. I really enjoy you guys, so thank you. And Casey, please go ahead. Then, any final thoughts on everything?
Yeah, I want to say thanks to everybody on the panel. You guys are awesome. We don't agree on every single tiny point, but that's okay, because that's just the way the body of Christ works, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to say too that we're not going to be able to change what is happening right now. That's not going to change. And I hope that people don't get the impression that we're trying to come up with some solution to what has to happen in these last days. But what can change is how we all react to all of it and what side we choose. And the most important thing is to not have any fear. You have to have faith. And if you have faith, you won't suffer the plagues that a lot of other people are going to have to suffer. This body it's just flesh, and we need to stop holding on so tightly to it, because in the end, if you make a decision for God, your death is released into eternity. And if you try to preserve that life, you may lose it. So that's just what I wanted to tell everybody. And I appreciate all the subs that came in support tonight of the show.
Thank you, Casey. And on that note too, I left links for everybody's channel that's on the panel tonight underneath the player. So please check everybody out. This is exactly what I wanted. I'm really grateful, guys. Thank you. I wanted to have a little time with all of you, different voices, talking about the times, giving a chat room as well for the people to join in. And thank you, man. This worked out perfectly. And I appreciate all three of you, man. I've got a lot of love for you. And I like to end these on a short prayer, guys. So if you don't mind, I'll just do a prayer here, and I'll say, Heavenly Father, first off, thanks so much for these men in my life. They're friends of mine as well. I appreciate all of them. We may not agree on every topic, but that's what makes it even more rich. I love these guys. I appreciate where they're coming from, and thank you for providing a platform for them to come here and all of us talk. Thanks for these wonderful people that are out there that are listening, whether it be live or afterwards. Thank you so much for each and every one of them. Touch their lives, Father, I pray, and touch all of our lives, especially those that are following you now, and let us gain our strength from you. And then all of those that are lost will show us ways that we can reach them and help them in peaceful, loving ways. And on that note, Father, I pray that everybody listening to this show, whether it be live or later, is in a spirit of peace and not of fear, not worrying about what's coming, but we're in very, you can call it crazy times. I like to say exciting times. Let's take it in the right spirit as it comes. Thank you, Father. I love you. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And fellas, I love you guys, man. We'll do more shows in the future. Sometimes I'll probably just do one with one of y'all, maybe another panel. We'll bounce it around, but this has been fantastic. So I want to thank you all, guys, once again. And big shout out just on a personal tip for my Patreon and PayPal friends out there. Thank you. Links underneath the boys' links. There'll be links for all of my stuff. If you want to support the work, that's fantastic. Thank you. And that's it, guys. Hey, man, thank y'all. Y'all take care. I got another video coming out in a few days. Later this week, I'll do a show where I'll invite y'all in with the chat to just talk about whatever you want to. And until then, God bless y'all. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. Love you, man. Be well, guys.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.